today? And is this going through? To everyone listening to us online. My name is Ozzy Gonzalez. I'm board president for TriMet, and you're joining today's board board retreat. We're calling it, yes, board retreat session. And I'd like to go ahead and get us started this morning. We do have two additional board members that will be joining us shortly. But in the meantime, we will go ahead and begin with today's program. We have a lot of exciting things to share, and I don't want to dilly-dally much longer. So, good morning, everyone. Once again, to our spring board retreat. I think I got it right this time. Today, we're gathering for some very exciting updates. We will be talking about Vision 2030 and some of the efforts that the agency has been undergoing around that. And we will be hearing about safety and security. As the board recalls, last fall we got together and began talking about this conversation with the promise of a future update. We also gathered to talk about Vision 2030 with the promise of a future plan. Well, the day has come for both, and today we're going to be hearing a lot about the Vision 2030 roadmap. Our staff has been diligent at putting together some plans that put this idea on the ground and into a tactical strategic roadmap. And so we get to hear about that today. And it's going to be, I think, filled with ideas that we get to respond to, as well as that I think the public will be able to receive. And I'm filled with optimism at what we're going to hear today. I'm really excited. Had the luxury last week of being in D.C. along with Sam, our general manager, and some staff of TriMet for APTA's legislative conference. And, you know, it's wonderful to get out of our Northwest bubble, as nice as it is this time of year, to go see what other agencies are doing and to see how TriMet represents itself and how we are received by other agencies around the country. And I got to tell you, I'm really proud to be representing the agency and to hear the enthusiasm and the support that people have for TriMet. Definitely, people are watching and listening to the things we are up to over here in the Pacific Northwest. And it's truly a testament to how we do things differently here. So we get to hear from some of that. We'll go ahead and begin the program. And as you make it here today, I did already let folks know our board members will be joining us as they arrive. So feel free to settle in, grab some coffee, and join us. So I would, while speaking to the board, I'd love to thank the board and the leadership of the organization. as well as its directors and all of its employees who go above and beyond every day and who work together collaboratively, creatively to improve this agency. And today we get to hear about how all of this is coming together through our Vision 2030 efforts. It really does demonstrate the consideration that every aspect of our organization takes when it comes to this collective vision. And from ridership to infrastructure to planning to safety and security, our employees and our community partners are all involved in making 2030 possible. And for the public listening today, today you will hear about the importance that you will play for us accomplishing this vision. We will move together. And we're going to hear some new voices today that are putting this plan into action, and we are going to have the opportunity to truly serve our community. And I know that TriMet's going to be a driving force for positive change in the years to come. The trends are all heading in the right direction. So with that, I know that we have a packed agenda. I'd like to turn it over to Sam, who's going to kick us off with some introductory comments. Good morning, all. Good morning, Sam.
Thanks, President Gonzalez. Good morning, board members, staff, and the public that's here. Thank you for being here today. I want to say to you, board, that our meetings in D.C. were very important. I think one of the most important ones that we were able to attend is with the acting FTA administrator, Administrator Veronica Vanterpool. We got a chance to talk with her about our projects, to really talk with her about some of the issues that we are facing, especially in the safety and security arena, about things. One of the things that she really posed to us is she used this term of GSD for transit agencies, get stuff done. So we had a nice conversation with her. We told her that a lot is being done here at TriMet because we know that the ridership won't return until we're safe, and that's critical with us. So our teams, Jamie and JC and Tara, they also went and met with the FTA staff to talk about previous grants that we submitted, how we could be better and more effective on receiving some of the federal funds there. But what I want to talk to you a little bit too about is I sit on the APTA board as a board member, and we had a meeting on that Saturday and received an update on the bus manufacturing in the United States. And I think something that's really near and dear to all of us is they've created a special task force that we're trying to place a member of our organization on, which is focused on preserving and nurturing the highly competitive U.S. bus process now in the market. So if you think about this, there are 19,000 incorporated cities with a population of 5,000. 10 of the cities in the United States has a population of 1 million. And then 310 cities in the United States have over 100 million population up to 1 million. But here's the kicker here. There's only 2 bus manufacturers in the United States right now. So everyone is now trying to move towards zero emissions. And if you remember that you took a resolution back in 2018 that we would no longer buy any more diesel buses moving forward. So that's something that we'll want to revisit with you as we move forward here. Everyone is pursuing zero emissions across the United States. And what the 2 manufacturers are telling us now, that we need to be able to piggyback, meaning we need to go out for our procurements with other organizations. We need to customize to only one type, and they want advanced payments as we move forward. So this is something that we are going to be working through. We just hired a senior director for Enterprise Zero Emissions program, and we'll be introducing that individual to the board here in our May board meeting. Another area we talked about was the workforce development and educational services across the United States with workforce. One point of interest for you to share with you, 43%, and I'll say this again, 43% of transit workers are over the age of 55 years old in the industry. So this is something that we are focused on at TriMet here. Retirees across the industry makes up 30 to 34% of all workers that are leaving the workforce. So TriMet is focused. I know Kim and her crew, they were focused on retention, recruitment, onboarding. We're really going to invest in training and also job development with promotional opportunities to be able to promote people up into those opportunities. And we have a committee that's looking at innovative ways to retain employees as we move forward. And then the last two pieces from our board meeting were discussed around the LA or Los Angeles 2028 Olympic Games. The opening ceremony is set for July 14th, 2028, and the games will be running from July 14th, 2028 until July 30th, 2028. They're estimating anywhere from 1 to 1.5 million spectators to be at the games. But here's the issue. There are not enough vehicles to be able to provide the service in Los Angeles at this time. So we had a deep conversation with all of the transit CEOs about how we can help each other to make America shine during the games in 2028. So there'll be more information that I'll be talking to you about. They're also reaching out for law enforcement. They don't have enough law enforcement to provide service down there. So they're asking agencies now to start talking to the law enforcement about dealing with the Olympics. And then directly after that, in August of 2028, the Paralympic Games start also in Los Angeles. So due to the two bus manufacturers, there's a shortage on vehicles. So they're asking transit agencies across the United States to start looking at that. And then finally, I was honored with others that are here to present Congressman Earl Blumenauer the American Public Transportation Association's Congressional Legacy Award in recognition of his vision and his tenacity in supporting the people and businesses and organizations that make up public transit in America. And I tell you, it was very electrifying to see him on stage and for him to talk to the full APTA group about that. So we had a really good trip in D.C. TriMet was definitely premier in conversations there with that. So I'll move forward now and talk a little bit about the updates that we're working on today. We have a lot planned for you as we move forward, and you're going to see some of the hard work that we've been doing. Just 2 days ago, we brought all of our executive directors, our leadership team, our directors, our managers, our assistant managers together in what we call a super expanded directors meeting.
Whoa.
A super expanded directors meeting. And I just want to call a shout out to Director Kim. He's wearing his Vision 2030 hat on that. So I really appreciate that. We brought in over 215 TriMet leaders to the meeting from across the agency in all leadership roles. We even had people that had worked overnight and showed up the next morning to be part of our Vision 2030, really to talk about the common goal. We've seen a lot of hard work, collaboration, and determination as we move forward with Vision 2030. And it's our why, as we've talked as a board, on what's going to deliver that goal and really drive us each day. So I want to show you what we showed them.
In a world constantly on the move, where every journey holds the promise of a new beginning, we stand at the forefront of transformation. At TriMet, we're not just public transportation. We are shaping the future of this region. Every day, we come together with a singular mission: to connect people for a better life. And now, we're embarking on a journey that will kick that into high gear. By 2030, we aim to deliver 120 million rides on our buses and trains. As society rebounds after a global pandemic, our goal is ambitious. Our goal is bold. But this isn't just a number. It's a testament to our commitment to making a difference in the lives of millions.
Why do I work at TriMet? 6 years ago, I became a bus operator, and now currently as an assistant manager of bus transportation, I am now able to help my fellow operators. I got the opportunity this last year to become the chair of our CISM committee, which now helps our TriMet agency through critical and stressful and traumatic events.
From cleaner air to less cars on the road, helping freight movement in our region, and also helping our own buses in traffic, to helping people save money. But the greatest of benefits is helping to increase access to opportunities. We're not just transporting people, we're connecting communities and creating opportunities.
Why do I work at TriMet? Thanks to TriMet, coworkers, and individuals in my community, I've been able to find a path and structure in my life. I have been able to bring reliable transportation to the community and operators. With TriMet resources and a few people willing to take a chance on a wild card, I have grown into an individual I've only dreamed of. And I'm determined to help others find their possibility and growth.
6 decades ago, my life journey started in northern Florida. I was raised in poverty, grew up with a single mother. She surrounded me with love and affection and provided great mentors. And public transportation played a great part of my life. It actually transported us to opportunities. My mother had several illnesses, and we needed to make sure that she got to the doctor. It was able to get us to groceries. And even as a little boy, it was able to get me to a haircut. And as I was growing up and I became a father of 2 boys, it played a very strong, critical part in their lives. When I joined TriMet in March of 2019, I thought that I had found my transportation utopia. I wanted to be part of this organization because of the life-changing events that were taking place here, is that we were carrying people to opportunities. We were providing reliable, safe transportation services to get people to those opportunities that they were looking for to make their lives better. And it was part of me, of that why I wake up every single morning, is to be able to transport people, to make sure that they are there and make their lives better. Also part of me was servant leadership, looking out for the well-being of my employees. That's always been a part of me, at the core of me, making sure that their well-being is taken care of, making sure that they're developed and able to provide the connectivity that we needed in our communities.
Our work will be transformative and focused around 5 pillars: ridership, infrastructure, resources, people, community. By focusing, we improve the rider experience, deliver rides that are safe, clean, convenient, and reliable, and we provide many benefits to our community that will revitalize this region and improve this place we call home. It will take all of us, 3,000 plus strong, and united by a shared vision to make positive change in our community. The transformational change we are working toward won't happen overnight. It will take small steps along the way to get us there. Together, we will overcome challenges, celebrate our victories, and recalibrate when needed, all toward our ultimate goal.
Every single one of our employees matter. Every single day that they come to work on fire like I am and ready to make a difference. From the bottom of my heart, thank you for being here. Join us on this journey together. Let's lead from the front in the revitalization of our region, because we are TriMet and we are how life moves. I just want to tell you, board, that it's our why, all of our whys, really what calls us to service, when you really think about that. And I know that you have shared your whys in earlier sessions with us, and it evolved into a rally cry. And you know, the rally cry is up on the screen here, is really connecting people for a better life. And I think we all live that, all of us live that every single day, is to be able to do that. It's very invigorating, it's electrifying, it's something that we do as people, as servant leaders, as the board, to be able to connect people. If you think about it, a year ago, we started this journey towards 120 million annual rides. we were sitting in rooms over in Beaverton and various places having this conversation. And some of the leaders in the organization had the size of dinner plates upon hearing about this. Their eyeballs were the size of dinner plates upon hearing about this 120 million annual rides. This was big. It's a big goal, and I truly believe that we can achieve this goal because we are TriMet, and we move the region here. And I know that some people are still asking today, why are we making ridership our target? What's behind that? And if you note, we put up here on the screen here that ridership benefits that are elevated with the goal includes mitigating climate impacts, really lessening congestion. This morning, I'll tell you this, as I'm riding in from the west side on Blue Line, I got a video, and I'm going to try to have Gwen loaded up, her and Felicia. I was standing in the door as the train was going down 26 before it dropped down in the tunnel. It was 22 minutes for them to get to downtown, and I'm recording as a train going by with this solid line. It definitely lessens congestion. It improves freight mobility and really enhances mobility across the board, and absolutely impact community through access to opportunity. And that's critical because the trains were loaded this morning coming in. If you took the train this morning, or buses, they are loaded. People are coming back to work, people are going to school, and then people are going to opportunity. So we're seeing many of these benefits here extend beyond transit, and it's also our goal. I think the public here is looking for us to be the regional leader as we move forward, and really the champion of these many interwoven concerns and efforts that are being there. Whether you ride or not, there's a benefit there that you reap on living in this region here, with a robust and widespread transit system. So it's very critical for us to continue to build, make more frequent service, make more express service, make more FX service lines. It's really critical for us to do that. And those that ride, like me, when you ride, you experience even more benefits. You get a safe, convenient, accessible, and affordable way to get where you're going. So really proud of the organization and proud of what we're doing as an organization here. But I do want to give you a little bit of food for thought for a moment. What would we have to give in order to get that number, that 120 million by 2030? So something to think about, and we'll talk a little bit this morning. And then what would it take for us to reach that goal over these next 6 years? What would we need to do that's very important? When we talk about the numbers, I truly believe that we can do this. No issue whatsoever. So Alan Lato, I know you're in the audience here. Why don't you go ahead and start making your way up? I would like for Alan to really talk a little bit about the numbers and give you a little bit of insight on the numbers. So Alan, I'll just turn it over to you.
Thanks, Sam. Good morning, Mr. President, board members. Speaking of Sam, the dinner plates for eyes, the 120 million, if we tried to bite it all off at once, that's a big number. But if we take it piece by piece, it becomes much more doable. And I'm just going to share with you a few numbers that we're seeing right now. This is a slide that is showing preliminary math for us to get to that 120 million. And I want to emphasize that there are still some refinements we need to do to these numbers, so don't commit them to memory. They're close but not precise. You will see slightly different numbers as we're finalizing this. But what this is illustrating too is kind of two different ways to think about it. One is if we are about 9.9%, just under 10% ridership growth each year. So each year compared to the previous year, if we're about 9.9% higher, we would eventually get just over 120 million rides by the end of 2030. We are actually slightly ahead of that, above 10% right now, and I'll show you a slide in just a moment that tells us that. The trick, of course, will be to continue to keep that going. But if you look at those numbers, the growth gets bigger and bigger and bigger as we go, so it becomes a bigger bite each time. The other way to think about it is if we're about 8.25 million per year additional riders compared to the previous year, that will get us to 120 million. And that's where we're kind of looking through a lens of thinking about how do we have a sizable but manageable chunk each year and try to aim towards that. So this just gives a sense of the math that gets us there. Next slide. So this shows over the past few years, all the way back to March of 2022, what the ridership looks like in terms of year-over-year growth. The blue line, the jaggedy line running across, shows that we were up in the 25% growth year-over-year back in 22, as we were really sort of climbing out of the depths of COVID. But we've kept that line generally is above the dotted black line, which shows about 10% ridership number there that we need to stay above. The only time we've been significantly below was the snow and ice storm month, which of course cuts into ridership and so looks very different. So that gives a sense of, hey, in terms of percentage-wise, we're actually somewhere near there. And then one more view of how these grow on the next slide. This shows what it looks like if we compare sort of pre-COVID ridership to all the years since. And each line, the bottom, the lighter line, 2020, shows the ridership in 2020. You can see the big falling off after March. And then 2021 growing a bit, 2022 growing a bit, 2023 growing a bit, 2024 continuing that growth. The lines are getting a little closer together, so that's where we really have to focus in on how do we keep those lines as far apart as possible and make as much progress each time. But what this hopefully is showing us is that this is really doable in terms of thinking about how we can take off piece after piece after piece and be strategic about what we're focusing on each time. I think there's one more. And this is, anytime you're working towards something, you want something to show how we're doing in terms of getting there. And the detail graphs are great, but something that's very simple and you can take in one moment, the thermometer. And so for 2024, if we're trying to hit something like that 8.25 million, we want to hit about 70.3 million in that math. And so that's what you're seeing here. It's been updated through March. Of course, we'll continue to update as each month goes by, and we're pulling those numbers together. This currently, I mentioned this before, currently shows ridership on Max, Bus, Wes, Lyft, and some cab rides and other things that are supplementing Lyft. There are some other rides that TriMet contributes to that we're also considering, and we just need to work through the details on the math on that. So that's why I'm saying it'll change a little bit. It's not going to be a huge difference, but these may change just a little bit. So this gives you a sense of how we're thinking about keeping ourselves informed and motivated and how we bite these off in bite-sized chunks and work towards thinking about all the different levers that we can pull to make this kind of growth happen.
President Gonzalez, we'll bring Alan back at the end of the presentation for board questions. If you want me to continue to proceed forward.
Great.
Okay. Thanks, Alan, on that. If you remember, board, with all of the work around the ridership goal, we put our minds together and established 5 pillars, which will help develop our work and also build our ridership. So ridership was 1, infrastructure, people, resources, and community. So I'm going to pause for a moment on the last pillar with community. J.C. Vanetta, our Executive Director of Public Affairs, is going to quickly touch on some of the outreach that we've done and what we've heard.
Yes, thank you, Sam. Good morning, Chair Gonzalez, board members. I wanted to just go quickly over what we're doing for outreach. And in your packet at your last board meeting, you had a summation of all of our outreach to date. And if you read it closely, we have done a record amount of outreach. Now, just so you know, that's not sustainable because of resources, but it's one of those things where this is so important for us. So on this first slide, we know that Vision 2030 and our ridership goal of 120 million annual boardings will benefit everyone. And so these are the messages that we're sharing with the public. The more you ride, the more we all benefit. We also know that Vision 2030 is really an internal plan helping us focus on our efforts. Next slide. But that what we're doing is we're taking that out and we're taking the very pieces of the puzzle, so to speak, and getting community input. And so you see some of the things that were up there that on the slide that we're going over. Our outreach for Vision 2030 hasn't been about the plan, about the pieces, touching our riders, the pieces that touch our riders in our community, and getting feedback on the customer experience, from the customer experience to the service we put out on the system to the investments that we are making in the system. We want to know from the community what it will take to get them to ride more. Next slide. And we are listening. Now, with the record amount of outreach that you've seen on the engagement report that you received last month, in December, January, February, we hosted or participated in more than 25 community events that were attended by more than 21,000 people, and we're gearing up for events this summer. This last month, actually just 2 weeks ago, we had a listening session with the Getting There Together Coalition. It was a great meeting. We had over 30 people there: Andrew Wilson, John Gardner, myself, Amparo Augusto, Jennifer Kuzer, all listened to it was a focus group, a listening session of sorts, where we heard them firsthand tell us two things around our safety and security efforts and what it would take for them to ride more and for them to encourage their folks to ride more. We got a lot of great ideas. As you can imagine, out of all of our outreach, we're hearing some of the same themes. Concerns about safety, security, cleanliness. We're hearing they want more service. They want more frequent service. They are very interested in our honored citizen and reduced fare programs. And there was a lot of appreciation for our multilingual outreach efforts and communications. So we are making a difference with our engagement. Now I'd say we are not stopping there. We have a number of events that are coming up. I just want to peg a couple of them. We are at OMSI for the Latin American Science Night, Dia de los Niños, New Year in the Park, Southeast Asia Cultural Festival, Earth Day, obviously, and then Cinco de Mayo, where we also plan some large outreach events. Again, all of this asking the community what their feedback on what it would take to get them to ride more. Thank you.
Thanks, JC. Really appreciate that. Our relationships and overall reputation matter, which you're going to hear more of as we move forward over the next couple of months here. There's a lot of work that's been done to advance the work on our pillars, and we work to focus our efforts wisely. Today, you're going to be hearing from our ridership pillar, Nate Smith and Kate Lyman. You'll also hear from our infrastructure pillar, James Snook, Casey Golden, and Keith Hildebrand. And you'll hear from our people pillar, Darcy Hardy Laufenberg, Fred Casey, and our resources pillar, Allison Belair and Tara O'Brien. And then finally, our community pillar, which would be Jennifer Kuzer. So Nate and Kate, come on up and kick us off.
And while you're making your way up, I want to make a reminder to the board. I wasn't clear on this. We do have some discussion set aside. We're going to be receiving all these presentations. Please note your questions and your comments, and there will be space to hear them out as soon as we get through these fantastic stuff that they've prepared for us.
Good morning. Thanks for having us here. And thanks to the board. So Kate and I have been working under the leadership of Andrew Wilson, Anessa Vitko, and Alan Lato. And so we're here to present some of the work we've been starting to dig in on the last few weeks. I am Nate Smith, Director of Customer Experience.
Hi, I'm Kate Lyman, a Manager of Service Planning and Development.
So the problem statement we were tasked with looking at is TriMet's vehicles and facilities do not always meet rider expectations for safety and cleanliness. So from that, we kind of identified two sub-goals, that being that riders feel safe on board and at stations, and that vehicles and stations are clean and comfortable. Next slide. So, in looking at riders feeling safe on board and at stations, we looked at the action steps. So one of the things is how we're staffing events. As we saw COVID hit, we got into social distancing. So we're looking at our presence at events where we can have a lot of opportunity to serve our customers and really provide the engagement that they need. We look at events for 12,000 people or more being our special events that we staff with additional staffing. Last year, we had 118 of those events. So there's a huge opportunity for us to really reach our customers where they need our support. So right now, we're looking at the gap between existing staffing and ideal levels, trying to find that sweet spot for our customers and providing the support that they need. So we're looking at identifying the resources required and submitting budget requests if there's additional resources that will be needed to help out there. And then also leveraging some of the employees that we already have. We recently increased some of our on-street staffing levels, so we're looking at can we double or triple, the number of on-street customer service reps that are out there engaging with our community for these big events. And then also potential infrastructure upgrades, determining if temporary fencing is needed at events. In the past, this is something that we use. It was very effective, and it also enhanced safety as well, and really helping with crowd control. So with that, we can move to the next slide.
So again, as Nate mentioned, the next thing we are focusing on is the fact that vehicles and stations need to be clean and comfortable in order to encourage more ridership. And so the first thing we've started to do is really understand the gap between what our current targets for cleanliness are and what it would take to meet those. Our colleagues throughout the agency in maintenance, vehicle maintenance and facilities maintenance are doing an amazing job. They have been working for the past several years, largely understaffed. And so we definitely want to recognize the great work that is being done in the agency. But largely due to staffing shortages, we are not quite meeting our current targets that we have now for how frequently we want to be cleaning our buses, our trains, our bus stops, and our MAX stations. So the very first thing we want to do is focus on hiring all of the positions that we do have budgeted so that we can meet our current targets. And then as Nate mentioned, what we also want to do is start to measure rider opinion about cleanliness a little bit more specifically. JC's team does a great job with community outreach already, and we hear cleanliness as a theme, but we're hoping to find out if there are opportunities for us to more specifically measure rider opinions. We don't know, for example, if what people mean by cleanliness is simply garbage or if they mean other things. And so we want to try to see if there's a way we can track that so that we can see if our efforts are making a difference as we start to meet our current targets for cleanliness. And once those two things are in place, we think there's an opportunity to identify the next phase of cleanliness targets. How can we get to even more frequent cleaning of our vehicles and facilities, and then figure out what it would take to get there in terms of additional resources.
And last, I'll just point out the incredible work that our leadership did in establishing these pillar groups. There's just a wide variety of help on these teams from every which department you can think of within TriMet, and that diversity is really bringing incredible opinions and thoughts and feedback to create creative solutions. So we put this up here to just kind of give context to how many people in our work group are from how many different areas and the incredible work they're bringing to the table. So thank you.
Okay, we'll move to our next group. I think it's Jamie, Casey, and Keith. Infrastructure. And thank you, guys.
Good morning, board. My name is Casey Golden, Director of Rail Transportation, and I'm here with my co-lead.
Good morning. Jamie Snook, Director of Major Projects.
Unfortunately, Keith couldn't make it this morning, so we will just take over his part of the presentation. So for reliability, our problem statement, for riders that trust TriMet, we must provide reliable service. We need to measure reliability in ways that are relevant to our riders, and we need to deliver both measured reliability and the perception of reliability in our system, such that riders can feel confident that TriMet will get them there efficiently and on time. If we can move to the next slide. So To do this, we are going to start measuring our on-time performance in ways that are meaningful to our riders. Currently, we measure on-time performance in a way that's, is a train 2 minutes early or 5 minutes late? We don't necessarily measure, did the train actually arrive, right? So that's significant. If we have a train that doesn't leave the yard or has to get cut for some other service, and we're not, and that train never shows up, now we have a potential rider waiting there for half an hour opposed to, the 15 minutes they're expecting. So measuring that in a way that's meaningful and then mitigating those strategies. Also expediting removals of autos in the right of way. That's one of our most significant and impactful disruptions. We experience approximately 11 autos in the right of way every month, and those numbers increase during the winter months and during inclement weather, and then sort of decrease during the summer months. So identifying ways to prevent autos in the right of way, and then increasing our response or decreasing our response time, so we can get tow out there more efficiently and effectively, and to decrease the overall impact. And then also implementing a conditions-based and preventative-based maintenance strategy, or predictive-based maintenance strategy. Currently, we operate a preventative-based maintenance, so every 30 days we'll look at brakes, or every 30 days we'll look at a switch, 60 and 90 and 180. But not every, for example, not every switch on our alignment throws the same. We have Clinton pockets, which may throw 10 or 12 times a year, whereas we have something on the steel bridge that throws, 100,000 times a year. So looking at what parts of our infrastructure require maintenance at particular times will allow us to create a more cost-effective and tactical approach to our maintenance strategy. I'll pass it off to Jamie.
Thank you. Other items on our list is we're going to complete the Better Red project. So this is a project that's going to improve the reliability and the efficiency of our entire system. And we use this as an example as we move forward, we're going to look at other ways and other bottlenecks and other improvements to make along our system to make it more faster, more reliable, more efficient. In addition, we're going to be looking at committing to building 20 to 25 Better Bus projects region-wide by 2030. Better Bus is our program where we look at context-sensitive, quick-build projects to help improve the speed and reliability of our bus system. So when you see the red lanes popping up all over town, thanks to Better Bus. So we'll be committing to doing 20 to 25 projects between now and 2030. In addition, we'll be looking at next-gen transit signal priority across our system, and we are committed to building at a minimum 5 new corridors with next-gen TSP across the system to improve speed and reliability region-wide. And then another one I'm really excited about is the FX on 82nd that will be built and open in June of 2029, just in time to show speed and reliability improvements to meet Vision 2030.
So those are all great goals and actions, but how are we going to measure them? So we're going to change the way we're measuring on-time performance, and we're going to measure it from the customer's perspective. Are we actually providing the amount of service that we think we're going to provide, and are we doing it on time in a timely fashion? We're also going to take our mean distance between failures and identify components that may require additional attention, and then maybe there's components that don't require as much attention as we are actually giving it. So looking at that and coming up with a tactical and predictive-based maintenance strategy. Also looking at our number and severity of disruptions. So we know that autos in the right-of-way are very disruptive to our overall operation. So reducing those numbers and decreasing the severity. Disruption time recovery goes back into autos in the right of way, but as well as if it's overhead wire or a flat tire, how do we what are we going to do to decrease our response time and decrease the impact to our overall operations? Preventative maintenance and compliance. A lot of our current maintenance strategy is directed by the FRA, FTA, and states and local governments. And so looking at how we comply with those maintenance requirements, as well as while trying to implement these predictive-based maintenance strategies, will be something we have to look into. And that goes right into the adoption of the conditional and predictive-based maintenance. So that concludes our presentation.
Thank you both. Really appreciate the update. Be prepared for questions here down the road.
Absolutely.
All right, our people group, Darcy and Fred.
Thank you. My name is Darcy Laufenberg, and I am stepping in for one of the co-chairs, my colleague from Talent Management, Scott Erickson, and I am joined by...
I'm Fred Casey. I'm manager for bus and rail workforce utilization.
So I'd like to just highlight our working group as well. If we could just go back, that's not a problem. We are joined by a wide representative of folks as well across the agency, which gives us a great perspective in terms of when we're thinking about recruitment and retention and really focusing on transportation and maintenance areas at first. So next slide, please. Thanks, Felicia. So we certainly have a lot of staffing challenges that remain, even though we're through the pandemic. Hiring is stabilized a bit and is improving. The challenge is trying to keep our new hires. So all the effort goes into recruitment, and then keeping them here is really what poses the largest challenge, especially in transportation and maintenance. So when we're thinking about Vision 2030 and carrying out all these different initiatives and pillars, really, if we don't have enough staff and well-trained staff that are engaged and motivated, we really can't accomplish Vision 2030.
Next slide, please.
So I'll read through the problem statements. We have two main ones. We are facing significant issues with a large number of new employees leaving within their first year. This high turnover rate is causing problems in three main areas. So our day-to-day operations, our ability to plan for the future, and the quality and trust of service that our customers receive. And so we know there's a lot of interactions in between the different pillars and a lot of synergy we can create by the different initiatives. So second problem statement is we wish to improve our first year retention for operator and maintenance new hires, which allows for greater operating flexibility and the ability to meet future service and ridership goals. So with that, I'll turn it over to Fred to talk about more of the details.
Next slide, please.
Next slide. Thanks.
So things that we've already done, we've obviously, we've established our team, and we started looking into where our issues were. As Darcy mentioned before, our hiring process has actually been really robust. It's been steady. It continues to improve as we go on. What we found, though, was our retention was not great. And we say the first year, but really it comes down to that first 6 months, where we are losing 40% of our people in that first 6 months. So we obviously need to do a deeper dive onto when we're losing them. Are we losing them in training? Are we losing them just out of training? You know, where are we losing these people at? How many are actually showing up to start? And try to figure out a way to keep them. Next slide, please. So what we want to do in the next calendar year is reduce the turnover rate 25%. And to give you a perspective on that number, if we can hit that goal, we will be back at our retention rate pre-pandemic, which was about 20%, somewhere in there. But our classes were smaller. We have 30 people in each class at this point. So losing more is actually making that percentage go up, and it's causing a lot of issues, as we were pointing out, with planning and actually just having the service out there to meet the Vision 2030 goal. We plan on hiring a new position in training that will be focusing on onboarding by May 1st. By September, we are looking at making sure that the training department and the trainees are getting more wheel time, so behind the wheel, on the road, actual driving, and not spending less time in the classroom and more time actually getting the experience with the vehicle. The other issue is we don't have a lot of engagement with exit interviews. A lot of people are just kind of ghosting us and not participating in that. So we are looking at ways to try to get engagement with that, either by anonymous, letting them do it anonymously, something, incentive, somehow we've got to get that information so we know exactly why people are leaving. We're also looking at surveys with the frontline people during that first year to kind of get a feeling how they're going, what areas we need to focus on to kind of keep them here. Additionally, with that is the number 6 up there, as you see, is extra board improvements. New hires now, because we're hiring straight to full-time, are going straight to the extra board, which is not a good life to really have, especially when you're starting here. It can be very difficult and taxing. So one of those improvements that we're looking for is, an AM PM board to help stabilize schedules so that people know that they'll at least be in the AM work every day or PM work every day. Also including with that, with training, is incorporating a mock extra board day within line training, where we would put the students through a day in the life of the extra board so that they get that experience, so they're not so shell-shocked when they come out, because they come right out of training and right into the extra board. And it's a very difficult transition for them, especially if they don't have any experience driving any of these lines. So we really need to kind of look on how to stabilize that for them.
Great.
Well, I appreciate it. I could look at the board. I guarantee you're going to have, both of you will have questions here very shortly.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Our resources team, Allison Belair and Tara O'Brien, welcome.
Good morning, Chair Gonzalez, members of the board. Tara O'Brien, Government Affairs Program Manager.
And hi, I'm Allison Belair. I'm the Director of IT Project and Portfolio Management.
Okay, so we're here for the resources group. Nancy Young-Oliver, our CFO, is our leader and unable to join us today, but we've been working closely with her as we've developed this strategy. So our one key word is sustainability. We are fiscally sound while being transparent and accountable. And the problem statement that we're working to address is, how can TriMet secure the revenues to support ridership growth? And though we don't yet know the amount of additional revenue that we will need to prioritize the strategies to get us to our ambitious ridership goal, we're working to chart the framework to get us there. Some of the strategies you heard about today are well suited to discretionary grant opportunities, and we're definitely pursuing all of those that we can, but our group is really focused on the ongoing sustainable revenue options and expenses. With that, I'll turn it over to Allison.
Thanks, Tara. So there are 3 pillars in our group strategy, and they're listed on the board. Expenses, decreasing expenses, increasing new continuing revenues, and any existing revenue streams, looking to increase them. So the main focus of the work group at the moment is to gather ideas and information, and then engage with the appropriate stakeholders to do a detailed analysis to ensure that the ideas are actually going to deliver cost savings or revenue increases. Prioritization. This is a marathon, not a sprint, and we want to make sure that the process that we're engaging in is sustainable over time as new people come in with new ideas, and tracking the actual savings and revenue increases that we have. We've met 3 times as a group and begun our focus on strategy 1 because that's where we have the most control. We've been gathering and analysing ideas for processes that could be improved to save money, and moving forward immediately with what we're identifying as quick wins, which are things that take minimal effort to implement.
And now we're just beginning our work on strategies 2 and 3, identifying new continuing resources to prioritize, as well as the most promising existing revenue sources that we can increase. Most of these strategies will take external partnership and coordination and have a longer lead time to implement. So we're beginning to gather a long list of the many resources available, either new resources or from our existing sources that we may be able to increase, and then working through a prioritization process. So we've just begun that work on the revenues and are engaging with several different divisions across TriMet as we begin the prioritization process. For example, with expenses and efficiencies, I think we gathered 47 different ideas initially. that we, and counting, more are adding to that list that we've gone through and really worked to prioritize. And so we imagine the same will be true with revenue, and that it will take a lot of partnership to really prioritize which new revenues or existing revenues we have the best opportunity to increase to gain more resources to implement our goals. And that's all we have for you today.
Well, thank you. I'm sure there will be resource questions as well, so stay tuned. And then finally, thank you, finally for our community pillar, Jennifer Kuzer.
Good morning. I'm Jennifer Kuzer, Director of Community Affairs and Engagement, and the co-lead of our group, Kate McKinnon-Kaiser, was not able to be here today. You probably know her best from the amazing Powell Operations Facility. And we are working with a great group of folks from across the agency under the leadership of Shelley Devine and JC Vanetta. Our problem statement, I do want to take a minute to actually read through this, read the slide, because our group really put a lot of thought into these words. So, our problem statement is that TriMet's reputation in the community is a direct reflection of the overall degradation of people and the environment that is often observed in the Portland area. Concerns about cleanliness and riders' behavior have led to the system feeling less safe, dignified, and desirable. We are making great strides to address these crises, but people don't know about our efforts and/or don't think TriMet cares. So, next slide. Some of the actions that we have in progress to address this problem are more presence. More presence on board. You've heard from the ridership group about thinking about how we have more presence throughout the system, particularly at events, but all throughout the service day. Also within the community engagement team, you heard JC talk about the kinds of work that we're doing to be more present all over in the community. Where you will soon be seeing a Do the Ride Thing rider etiquette campaign that's going to be really just trying to focus on that sense of care that we all have for this shared space. We're also working to have a QR code available at stops and stations for real-time reporting of cleanliness concerns, other concerns about the system, and eventually hope to move that also to vehicles. And these things hopefully will be able to feed into dashboards that will certainly inform us internally, but we'd also hope to be able to have those be external facing as well. Next slide. And then some more ideas that we are beginning to explore. One is how we can think about the deployment of our security staff to expand their coverage to be more places and more times. You also heard about that from the ridership group. Ride guide type shifts for all non-union employees. As many of us are riding every day, can we make that into an opportunity to engage with our customers more and just show our presence and be of service to people? For all employees, we'd like to see some access to the de-escalation training that operators and frontline staff have. We've also heard about some business card type things that some agencies have available to hand out to people that they can use to say that they need help or that they're available to help. Something to explore. I mentioned public facing dashboards. Another idea is a TriMet rider's manual, like an owner's manual, kind of going a step further than the etiquette campaign. And I'd rather be riding TriMet kind of marketing campaign. Another idea is a speakers bureau, having our leadership be in more places, talking with more leaders across the region about the goals that we're trying to achieve with Vision 2030. More cleaning than we currently are able to do, so expanding beyond our own footprint and into the public right-of-way around stops and stations. Even one of our group members had a great idea about somehow partnering to make that into a community service option for folks that are doing that as part of school or other requirements. Also, having faster responses to graffiti. So these are all ideas that we're going to be exploring. Some will come sooner than others. Some of the metrics that we are looking at it really dovetail with what our ridership group was talking about. So we're collaborating closely with our ridership group to get these more dialed in. But thinking about the attitude and awareness survey that we have now, we also have a customer satisfaction survey that just came out in the field, so we hope to have those results soon. We've got the complaints and commendations about security and cleanliness that we can track on a monthly basis. We're tracking how many community events we staff, and then just how much of that system presence and cleaning we can have. Next slide. And our vision also is something that Kate and I put a lot of thought into where we want to be, and we want all people of all backgrounds to feel safe and welcome on our system. We want riding TriMet to be seen as an enjoyable experience among people's top choices for travel. Youth will want to ride, and parents will encourage them to do so, and people will refer to TriMet as a leader in our region's vitality.
Jennifer, thank you. President Gonzalez, that concludes our presentation.
Well, time marches on. Board members, you've been warned. Our staff is available for any clarifications. I think if we have clarification comments, let's get those out. I would love, before we close, to have a round of general thoughts as well, because the staff not only wants to make sure that we heard them, but they want to hear what we're thinking about, what they've presented today. So with that, please raise hands and I'll do my best to referee. Yes, please. Director Frisbee.
I know it's shocking that I have thoughts.
You can give them out in chunks or all at once.
I'm trying to figure out how to do that because I might follow up with specific questions too and comments. I want to start by saying how much I appreciate everyone's work and everyone being here today. I know this represents a lot more work than the slides that are on the screen, and want to really commend that. My first big comment is not intended to be as cranky as it might land. I don't know that this gets us there. I'm not convinced of that. I think these are all really important things we need to do. I think they're absolutely part of the solution. I love the creativity and some of the pieces that are here. And it's true that I tend to come from a slightly more infrastructure perspective, so I will own that. An infrastructure team, this is in no way reflective of you. I don't think this gets us to 120 million rides. And I think that's both from a service increase perspective and a new lines perspective. I'm happy to be convinced of that, convinced that I am wrong if we have data that show that I am wrong, but I would need to see that. And if we do not have data that shows that this will get us to 120 million rides, my question is, what infrastructure changes do we need to see to get to 120 million rides? Is it, what's the FX system? I know I've been asking about our BRT plan for months. I know it's coming. I would really like to see it soon. What's the next phase for Forward Together? Is that the right name? Our new right? Yes, thank you. I forgot all the forwards togethers, here's, movings. Thank you. What is the next phase of that? I'm super excited about, and I appreciated Jamie's emphasis on the minimum of 5 next-gen corridors, but my immediate response to that was like, it should be a minimum of 15. So that is my overall big picture question, and that is in no way intended to de-emphasize the work that has happened, because I think it's really important. I think we all want to meet this, and we want to feel confident that we're going to meet this, and this to me feels like we're going to be squeaking by. And my other big piece that I have highlighted as part of this is I do think that this needs to feel like a little bit more of a community perspective from our local government partners too. If we are really doing big infrastructure projects, they have got to be part of that. I'd like for them to have more skin in the game, and I'd like for them to be bought in a little bit more. I think all of us have spent time talking to local neighborhood groups as the Forward Together plans get implemented. And I would like, to be able to say, yeah, here's how your service is changing, and here's the big picture piece that it's going forward, and have them get engaged in that in a real way. So, I would like the city of Beaverton to know that we're expecting a 10% ridership increase from them. Actually, I would guess for Beaverton, it's probably more like 20%. not in my district, but I'm expecting a huge increase on the 82nd line as we make that work better for folks. But what is Clackamas doing to help participate in that? What is this, I know that the city has been a big partner in that, but we should have that model everywhere. So, and then I have individual thoughts, but I can follow up.
Okay.
Do you mind if I respond just quickly?
Yeah.
And maybe we should have made a little bit of a clarification that the focus areas that you saw this morning and what we've assigned to the work groups is just for 2024. As we look at concentrating on our one thing, what is the low-hanging fruits? What are the things that we need to concentrate on first? And to your point, Director Frisbee, we have a lot of work to do. And I think that first and foremost, we're getting all of the basics right. And while we're doing that, we're also working in the background on a lot of the things that you have mentioned. So please understand that. But what you've seen this morning were a lot of the focus areas that we are concentrating first and foremost, and then going from there. So just a little bit of a clarification. So.
I appreciate that. And I will also say, at least from an infrastructure perspective, right now it takes us 5 years to build a BRT line.
Yep.
So we need to be working 3 years ago on the BRT lines for next year. So.
Director Edwards?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I echo some of those concerns as well as Commissioner Director Frisbee. I would like to talk about also the outreach. Are we looking at Juneteenth as far as the African American community? And because that's a big one. In regard to the cleanliness, security, and safety, are there some consistencies with that? Time of day, specific routes that we're looking at and addressing what the staffing requirements would be. In regards to reliability, are we identifying the preventative maintenance? Is there some consistency as well that would, because of repetitive issues, to make sure that we're addressing them in a preventative way so that, like I say, if we've got things that are happening 80% of the time and that we can prevent up front, are we looking at that and making sure that we're doing the preventative maintenance that's required to make sure that we address those ahead of time? Certainly it's a lot less expensive that way. In regard to retention, 40% is a terrible number. Are we asking why? When we hire someone, are we having them do an interview of TriMet? What are their expectations? What do they expect to get out of TriMet? Is there an age factor involved with these, the lack of retention as well? And I think those things need to be looked at so we know, where it's coming from, and if we're getting a response back from those folks, and are we doing exit interviews on folks that are leaving as well to find out why they're leaving? And there should be some kind of gauge, I guess, to determine what is causing this. Is it TriMet that's causing this, or is it the employees? Are we out of step with what's going on with, to have such a high number? What is causing that? And so I think we need to take a hard look at that as well. Sustainability. How much is the budget impacted when we're losing folks at a 40% rate in the first year? That's got to be huge. And so we need to make sure that we somehow figure out what's going on there, because that, like I say, that's a huge budget issue as well, in my opinion. As far as the reputation is concerned, we're talking about having the speakers sessions and the Speakers Bureau. Are we having any listening sessions? And when we have listening sessions, are we reacting to those listening sessions so that folks know that they're being heard? Because if we're just having listening sessions and they're not being heard, we're not reacting to them, we're not letting them know that, yes, we heard you, we're addressing this issue, and here's the outcome. Because if we don't do that, then certainly folks are going to be reluctant to even share, so if it's a waste of their time. So just wanted to share those observations.
Thank you, Director Edwards. Director Way?
Thank you. I'll keep my comments general for now. This is a lot of information to digest this morning. But I do appreciate the work groups, the teams, really the uniform leadership behind this vision. So just thank you. A lot of appreciations for this work. My comment is really around, when we're looking at each of these pillars, right, and also the metrics and the outcomes, I'm sort of struggling to distinguish what is just normal TriMet annual things that we do versus what are the very specific things, action steps, metrics, processes that we're creating, like new things that we're creating for Vision 2030. Because some of this is like, yeah, like that makes sense. We want to have excellent customer experience. That should already be happening year after year, right? We're hopefully having those metrics year after year around that. Same for infrastructure, same for projects, etc. But what is the marker that is significantly different from what we're currently doing and what the Vision 2030 goals are? So I would just like to see more of a breakdown, or just, right, like what is the difference? What's the delta here that we're really trying to go for and shoot for?
Thank you, Director Waite. Fellow board members, Director Kellogg.
Thank you, everyone, for the presentation. Alan, would you mind coming up for a minute? So I'm asking Alan to come up because, it seems the primary directive here is having an accurate count on the number of rides to know whether what we're doing is getting us to our goal. So my first question is, where do these numbers come from? How are we tracking them? Is it based on paid fares, unpaid fares?
Right.
So many questions.
Yeah. So the basic answer, and depending on how deep you want to dive into it, we should get somebody else up here who knows the technical side of it. But basically, we have automated passenger counters on most of our vehicles. So that is a way of independently counting how many people are getting on and off. They're used throughout the industry. It does not rely on somebody paying fare or tapping or anything like that. It is literally the movement on and off of a vehicle. So we have those on our buses, we have those on our MAX trains. WES is checked by a conductor, so there's somebody doing that. And then Lyft, of course, is the individual operator is tracking that as well. So these are pretty hard numbers. There's a little bit of adjustment you have to do. At the end of a line, when an operator is taking a break, are they getting off and on? A few things like that. But otherwise, it's pretty solid numbers that we have a lot of experience, more than 20 years now, of using and understanding.
Okay, so for the unsophisticated, this is essentially like a motion sensor at the door. So when
actually, if you look when you go in, there are little silver boxes on each side with a couple of different electronic eyes. It's not a video; it's just looking at the braking, and the algorithm takes it, looks at that and is looking at human movement, not strollers or whatever else.
Yeah, and so you're not the right person to answer this question, I wouldn't guess, but how does it differentiate between people getting on and people getting off?
The movement between those different sensors. So is it going this way or is it going that way?
So there are 3 sets of sensors?
If you look at the box, there are multiple holes.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
I just want to add clarity for the Lyft portion of that. It's actually tracked in our trapeze system. So every single ride that's completed, because those are all scheduled rides.
Yep.
So that's counted through there more specifically. We do some spot check verifications, but overall that is all tracked in the system that does the scheduling. So it's very specific.
Okay. And Alan, you had mentioned other rides that we provide. Can you give us a little bit more detail on that?
Just as a flavor, we contribute a fair amount to the streetcar operations, and it's our operators that are running the streetcar. So exactly how much of that should we count, if we should count it? We're just working through that in terms of how do we match ridership to policy and effort.
Okay, and then what about in a situation where a MAX train breaks down and we've got to send a bus to go pick those people up to get them to the next station? Is that 1 ride? Is that 2 rides?
You're getting deep enough now that I can't tell you how
Fair
the
enough.
algorithm works with that.
But that's my concern, is that we've just got clarity on what it is exactly we're counting. Because if we're doing all the right things, but not counting it enough, then, that's going to be depressing, right? And if we're counting too much and not doing all the right things, then that's going to be sort of illusory in terms of our success. So I just want to make sure that we've got clarity and we can have confidence in what the numbers are.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to mention, our transit systems and asset support team has a group that is dialed in on data quality, data analysis, and they're the ones who ultimately are going to own this and understand the depths of it and carry it forward so that we're not sort of estimating as we go. We have a clear documentation of it.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. That's all I have for you, too. All right, I'm going to shift gears real quick. Ms. Kuzer's presentation on the public affairs effort, I'm 100% behind that. I think it's great to talk about, assuaging some of the concerns that were brought up at these community events about safety and security. But one of the things I want to make clear is that, the Do the Right Thing campaign, I think a lot of the people that are going to see that are probably already doing the right thing. And really what I'm worried about is the people who are the top headline of those concerns in the community meetings that are getting on our transit vehicles without paying their fare, without having good intentions, maybe not even getting off, or, and again, is a human nature concern that's out there, but we've also got to worry about the people who are doing the right thing and are on our system and want to just feel that perception of safety and security if they put their kids on it, like you talked about. Right now I know a broad swath of this population would not put their kids on a MAX train, right? And that's because of all the terrible publicity that's out there. And some of that is due to our, I don't want to say failure, but lack of screening people getting on these vehicles. We have an open access system. It's not a decision that any of us made, but it's where we are, right? And so we've got to figure out how to make those two things mesh together. So I will retreat from my soapbox now, but thank you.
I will say that we're going to have some conversation during our safety and security presentation that's coming up after this as well on that.
Stay tuned. Director Kim.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Simon, everyone. This has been great. I think we're at an amazing place compared to a year ago when we sort of decided that we're going to hit 120. I also like how JC clarified these are some low-hanging fruits, goals for 2024 and sort of more of an immediate goals. And I think as other board members have mentioned, it'll be educational for us to talk beyond, 27, right? So I'm thinking, I think many of these low-hanging fruits that we've covered today, we've heard about today, will get us the annual additional numbers of 8.27 million, probably for the next 2, maybe 3 years. And I'm thinking about the 4th and 5th year, right? Because then we ran out of, easy work that we can punch then. So some deep work that will set us up for success in those 3rd and 4th and 5th year would be crucial here. And I know that's in the works, so just re-emphasizing what everyone's already working on. Changing the definition of ridership, not a big fan, never been a big fan of changing the definition of unemployment either, depending on, it's more of a social commentary. But, I think about if we're, just to be intellectually honest, right? It's that when we decided on 120, did we have those numbers in mind or not? We didn't, then it shouldn't be included. Now, it'd be a different story if we decide to take on the, work that to replace, let's say, Intel shuttles or Nike shuttles, and TriMet's somehow running those. Then yes, those are new rides, and we can count those towards our numbers. But when it comes to the streetcar operators, maybe that's a discussion. But I wouldn't. I think we will achieve our number by 2030. But I would hate for someone to say, "Well, Thomas, well, Sam, you sort of fudged the formula." I would hate to hear that, right? So cleanliness problem.
I'm a big fan of do the right thing, right? Lately, my toddler, I clean up after her all the time, and as she makes more mess, I'm realizing the answer isn't more staff time, aka my time. Perhaps either she makes less mess, or she cleans up after herself to fix the issue. So I think about that. More emphasis on do the right thing, I think, is a good sort of an approach, creative approach to get rid of the problem instead of sort of us fixing it for them. Road disruption prevention, perhaps conspicuous cameras, something that would really deter reasonable drivers. Something I think of that as a truly low-hanging fruit that we can avoid any service disruption. When it comes to people, I support working with the union to consider annual or biannual retention bonuses with clawback provisions. So even, sort of bonus amounts that increases over the sort of course of the year, course of the career of the operators and staff. So similar to how in the legal industry, there's a Kravitz scale for not just annual salaries, but for holiday bonuses as well that goes up and up and up, the number of years that you're at. So truly retaining all spectrum of employees and incentivizing exit interviews, throwing money at it. This matters to us. So similar to how we incorporated sign-up bonuses, 7,500. Exit interviews are perhaps even more crucial after we've drained 6 months worth of staff time, other staff time, and funds to train these folks up. So really treating it like it is worth, I think, $200 Amazon gift cards to really get a 30-minute FaceTime with these exit folks who are exiting. I'm a big fan of the volunteer program ideas. I think that will check off many boxes. I've seen and experienced myself, those Solve corporate events that tie with Solve, and especially during the warmer days, it would work out so nicely. It's more of a pat on the back for the corporate folks who get to participate, but they do make a difference, and then they're going back home with stories, and of course they're posting stuff on Instagram and so forth. So that can sort of check off multiple boxes, and relatively with generally one staff running the program, relatively low cost. I like that. And overall, I have this image. I try to visualize, just like the exercise we all did about a year ago with the trainer, what it would be like for me to wake up or walk through the town wherever I'm at. For me, it would be TV Highway and Corn Pass. Just like last week, I took my toddler on 57, which was late, by the way, and then, but then I had a tracker, which was nice, and then so went to the, Hillsborough TC and so forth. But I visualize that, and I just wonder, do very rudimentary questions like, man, are we going to have enough seats on this bus? So I'm guessing, it was around, 11 a.m. when we rode. And then I looked around and said, hey, if they're double the people, I'm not sure. Maybe, and so more discussion and emphasis on infrastructure would give us peace about whether we would have the structure and, of course, the maintenance and all of the conversations we've already had to support our doubling of our capacity. So thank you again, everyone. I look forward to more.
Thanks. And I get the luxury of having a couple of comments here, as I've seen and heard from my fellow board members as well. And I want to, before I give you my comments and we move forward with our program, I want to acknowledge this is a long conversation. We have years and years to refresh and revisit these ideas. I invite the board to continue this conversation. We can now be a little bit more specific in our engagement. Now that we've heard some of these pillars, we've attached them to some individuals that are owning some of these pillars. I think, I certainly encourage you to continue your inquiries, your curiosities, to learn more about any individual pillar and engage with our staff about any individual pillar on some of the things you've brought up. Again, this is an ongoing conversation. We don't get the luxury to hear about Vision 2030 in every board meeting. We've got to kind of do the blocking and tackling. But any board education sessions that you want to have around it, any individual sit-downs you want to have with staff, I highly invite you to lean into that. I think the staff is very receptive to our ideas. And again, this is such big stuff. We're getting a lot at us now, and we've got to process and refine as we move forward. I will acknowledge do you want to say something before I jump into stuff?
Oh, just if to facilitate that, we could get, I did not write down the co-leads of each pillar throughout the process, and since some folks weren't here today, if we could get that, then we know who to bother.
I'll provide that to you.
Thank you for saying that. I've got the names in front of me right here, but that's because I'm lucky. Yes, that would be fantastic to be able to have that information. And do not be surprised, staff, Sam, if a board member wants to have a deeper conversation on any one of these pillars, or maybe more than one.
Yeah, no problem. Just a request to come through the office.
Yes.
So that I'm aware of what's going on and we can make sure that we get people to sit down and meet with you.
Worth noting, absolutely. Yes, I think the right way to route ourselves would be through Sam, and we have our board clerk, Adriana, who can help us navigate all of this. So I've got a couple of comments that I would love to bring forward as some general thoughts that I consider things I did not hear today. But I want to preface them by acknowledging the work that has gone into this. I heard a lot of things. Clearly, our staff has been thinking about this, coming forward with some metrics that are showing us that you're starting to put these kind of big, long, far away vision ideas into the ground, into your sort of, what do I got to do next? And I really appreciate that. So what I have today is really a yes and. I like what I'm hearing. I think that you're looking at this in the right way. You've got a lot of good directives. But there's things I didn't hear, and so I'd like to share a few comments to lean on some of the topics that my fellow board members brought up as well. And I'll go in the order of the pillars, so bear with me, and hopefully something can record some of this stuff from all of our comments. So ridership. I think that yes, we've got to make sure the numeric quality, the data quality is there. But I also want to acknowledge the day we hit 100 or 12 million or 120 million, pardon me, the day we hit that number, I'm still going to want to know what else we can do, how we can move further. And I don't want to get lost too much in the numbers. I know that it's an exciting thing to watch that thermometer go up, but I don't want to lose sight of the things that get us there in the number. Because redefining ridership or counting better is great. But I think what we want to do as we move life forward is to continue to increase that value proposition so people have reasons to get on the thing. So I'd like to encourage us to take what I would consider a market sector approach to ridership, and not just try to tick the numbers up, but make sure that the trends are heading in the right direction, especially in these early years. Looking at the performance of different mobility services, so Lyft versus West versus Max versus streetcar, so that we can understand them at that individual market sector level, to use a private sector term. From an individual route level, we know where the high-performing routes are. We know where the low-performing routes are. That should give us some directives to focus in on getting some of those lower-performing routes to do better, and learning from where the higher-performing routes, what they have to offer us. I think there's insights into that, and I'll touch on that in a sec. And I think having strategies that are specific to that will not only help the numbers, but it'll give us some insight into how to continue to improve this quadrant, this route, that mobility service. So I think that'd be great. And I didn't hear much about that part. With infrastructure, leaning into Director Frisbee's comment, will it be enough? I think it's a question worth answering, and I believe we all know the answer may be no today. If we do all those things, the 5 extra routes, the current size of the buses, if we were to get to that ridership, is it enough? And so knowing that potentially there's going to be more needed, I think starting to lean into what else we can do, what other levers can we pull that are going to help build up that infrastructure. And this is where I invite us to look at our TOD, look at our IGA partners, look at private-public partnerships that will help us improve the overall infrastructure side of things. And I think that the concept of infrastructure, we can expand a little bit, and I'll touch on that when I get to resources. Now on to people. There's a couple things that I think there's cards we're not playing with this retention idea. And to think 25% reduction in the next year in the loss of retained employees is ambitious. But I believe that there's things that we're not doing. I don't hear enough about the career opportunities that these positions represent. If we look at, in 1 year, getting a CDL license paid for and being able to turn around and get a job where you can use it, if you compare year 1 to what we offer versus the outside world, we're not only competing with other transit agencies, we're competing with other people that want CDL drivers. And there's a lot of those right now. There's more things moving as well as more people moving. And both of them need the CDL license. Where we, I think, stand apart is in the career opportunities that we offer those folks. I don't believe we're playing that card strongly enough. I'm not sitting in those onboarding or recruiting sessions. But from what I understand, these positions lead us to understanding a transit agency more broadly. I've heard enough about careers that began as an operator, and now you're managing, now you're COO. I've heard CEO positions that began as operators. There is so many potential avenues that entry point brings to individuals. Not just wages, not just benefits, but actual career opportunities and the customer service element that is hard to replace when you're just driving boxes around. Those are the things that I think are differentiators that are powerful. Childcare, I want to just put that out there on the record. Childcare is a major differentiator that is a card we could play. We don't play, we could play, we all need it. And if we had that solution for our staff, for our craft workers that are building our infrastructure, we would be the horse to beat. And I think that's something worth looking at. Now, the onboarding, I want to acknowledge, being an operator has changed in the last couple of years. Now we have these plexiglass dividers. People got to be dodging milkshakes. It's a thing that is really pushing our drivers to realize, in year 1, driving the vehicles is one thing. Helping navigate the human equation is a major element. And I'm not sure how much our training programs set people up for success and support them on that side of it. I encourage us to borrow from the industry of medicine. Nurses and doctors have this thing called bedside manner. You can't get out of med school without going through live scenarios with paid actors that are going to be very difficult patients, that have religious exemptions, that have phobias to needles, and they've got to learn how to navigate those things. And those are the soft skills that they lean on when they go out to practice. In a similar way, I think those kinds of things are important more today than they were even 2 years ago. Resources. The blind spot I heard here is it's not just words and money that build infrastructure. We actually need to be kind of better sense of hardware resources. The infrastructure side of things we need to be able to manage. And I know that we heard already there's only 2 vehicle or bus manufacturers in the country right now. Not enough for what we're buying. This is also true of parts and components. This is also true of the charging stations and the people behind it all. I think resources needs to include our supply chain and understanding where the vulnerabilities are there. Because we could get $1 trillion handed to us today, we still can't buy a bus with it any faster. We still can't buy a component any faster. And so we got to look at those vulnerabilities. Community, let's see here. For me, the final one on community, I like the idea of the rider's manual, and I think that having a refresher course on etiquette and social grace and the social contract we all make is key. Let's extend that to our community partners. I'd love to extend that to our IGA partners. What does a high-performing community partner look like? What is the top 10 things that we expect from them? If we have community partners out there that are not encouraging reasonable ridership, that are not encouraging paying their fare, that are not aware of what this rollout means, I think that this is where we want to sit down and reinvest in that relationship. So I believe that putting this stuff all together, there's a lot of opportunities to continue to grow this, continue to increase it. And my final comment going out to community at large, and I want the agency to hear this, we aren't alone in this. This is not our job to do. We do depend on that supply chain. We depend on the people we're recruiting. We depend on the people getting on. And in all those cases, I encourage the public out there to lean into this. We want you as staff. We want you as riders. We need you as the eyes and ears for safety, security, cleanliness. And I think that's the message that in the end is going to get us up there to that number, because we're going to need more seats eventually, more buses and more of all the other thing. And I encourage us to acknowledge, the public, they are ambassadors for us. So whatever we can do to look at a market sector approach that differentiates the commuters from the weekend riders, the event people, and letting everybody know, try it, bring somebody new, bring a friend. When you have visitors, make that one of the cool things you do. You see the waterfalls, you also get on a streetcar. Those are the kind of things that I think help bring us forward. All right, I've said enough. Encourage us to continue this great conversation. And before we move to the next thing, are there any comments we have that didn't get expressed before we move to safety, security kind of stuff? Yes. And we will be taking a break. Yes, I've heard there is a break planned in the agenda. We're just going to plow right through. No, I'll be quiet now. Sam, get us on track.
First and foremost, I feel great. I think you have provided wonderful feedback. I have 10 pages of information that's provided. I really like the fire. As I talked to the group a couple of days ago, what I've heard here today is the fire from you to make sure that we're successful. And I truly appreciate that feedback. So I'm going to take that back and sit down and meet with the team and have a conversation. I appreciate you also for being curious and staying curious, because we're going to continue to lead from the front on this endeavor as we move forward here. So I really appreciate that great discussion from all of you and good information. As you see, there's a lot of hard work that's went in. We're going to continue to focus on improvements and really look at building our relationship. We are going to take this information. I know everybody out there was writing notes as well. We're going to take this information. We're going to discuss it. We're going to fit this in with all of the other considerations that was brought forward. And then we will be coming back to you very shortly with an update and some answers to some of the questions here. The second piece, I want to just let you know that we're in the process right now of hiring a Vision 2030 senior project manager to really help guide our work as well. So you can expect an announcement pretty soon here on that. And then we're going to continue to move forward with refinement of the work and our work plans now. I'm going to take all the information that you provided, and we're going to begin to implement and develop kind of a cadence of regular reports to you each month as I'm coming forward and giving you progress as we move forward. We've talked about ridership being kind of that biggest indicator, but there were things in here that when we build a report to you that we'll be talking about, and I'll bring that information. I think engaging the community is very clear. I heard you, very, very clear. We're going to set up a movement to where we get out and involve all of our governmental agencies and our communities as we move forward, and also ask them to participate and set targets in those areas as we move forward with engagement on the system. And then finally, on June 28th, we're going to meet with our expanded directors, and we're going to bring everybody across the agency back together. We're going to celebrate, but also we're going to recalibrate as we're moving forward with some of the new things that you're bringing forward. And then we're going to come back to you with another strategy session and retreat for the August board strategy session. So we'll be putting the dates out to you, or it's probably already on your calendar currently now. If not, we'll make sure in August that we put it on your calendar there. On a personal note, I want to just say to you that I appreciate this, because I'm taking this and I could feel the rage and fire from what was stated here to get back with the team and really sit down and talk about it, look at implementing some of the ideas that's there. I could reassure you that we are going to be successful as the leader of this organization. And also, we have a team of dedicated, talented individuals that are committed to make that happen. We're going to work to build a level of teamwork, collaboration, and camaraderie within the community, within the organization. And I can say that we have started that. I've never seen the level of camaraderie that we're building here with Vision 2030 in my entire transit history here. So I really appreciate what the team is doing, and we're going to continue to do that. Everyone's focused right now, and we have digged in, and we're willing to move this forward to success. So I would end by saying that you should truly be proud of our leadership that's out here in the organization. I don't know too many organizations that's moving forward with this gigantic vision. I was just in D.C. with almost every CEO from around the country, and no one's moving with a vision as big as ours. And that came directly from the APTA president to me in a conversation with him. So we're going to make sure we include those on the front line as well, because they are critical. They put the service each day out there and really connect so many people to opportunity. So with that, President Gonzalez and the board, thank you. And thank you for the feedback. We will immediately get to work on this here. And that concludes my report to you.
Thank you, Sam. And so with that, I want to move us into a break. We've covered a lot of ground today. We're going to take are we still good with 15 minutes? We're tracking 10 minutes. I think it sounds like a reasonable thing. We're going to do that. We'll be back at 11:03. Muchas gracias. program for today. We are moving into the next topic for the day. First, thanks to everyone who presented in that last portion. We heard a lot of great information. So now, as we regroup, we're going to move into our next presentations. They're updates on our safety and security, which is so instrumental to the entire vision. And so with that, I'm going to go ahead and yield the floor. We're going to be hearing from Andrew Wilson today, our Executive Director of Safety and Security, and Alan's coming back for a little more. All right. So, and again, to the board, we will have the opportunity. We're going to hear a lot of stuff. Write down your comments, thoughts, and questions, and we will have the opportunity for discussion after their updates. And with that, I turn it over to the team.
Yeah, thank you, Board President Gonzalez and members of the TriMet Board. Appreciate your service. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what we initially talked about back in October. During the strategy session, we put forward 3 program modifications, you might recall, that we were looking at increasing on the security presence side in particular, but just trying to increase the safety of folks out on the system. These were program modifications that we thought long and hard about, did some research on. We've elected to go forward with 2 of them, and I'm going to talk about those. I'll talk about one of them, and Alan's going to talk about the other, and I'll tell you why we didn't go with the other third one, if that makes sense. And I'll just say that we have really made, you've heard me talk about from a safety security perspective, we've made some significant gains over the last 3 years. You've heard me talk about the declines in operator assault, the declines in use of fentanyl and other drugs on the system. We had a really great win, team effort with SB 1553 getting signed by the governor, and just real great support down in Salem. So we've made some really good strides to increase safety and security on the system. But we're going to be focusing on a couple different areas this morning, and I want to let you know that my last slide I'm the most excited about, which is about fair enforcement out on the system. And I don't want to bury my lead too much, so I guess what I'm saying is we will get to that in that last slide, and I want to have some conversation about that, and excited about some of the opportunities that we have there. So moving forward, the first program modification we put forward was really about establishing system presence out on the rail system, really focused on putting a security guard on every train. This is the program modification we went forward with this time because we really have heard back from an attitude and awareness survey that system presence is extremely important to folks. When they want to ride a train, they want to see personnel out there. So we have moved forward with this. What we have not moved forward with is program modification 2, which was really establishing more code enforcement teams out on the system. At this time, we're not moving forward with that because of the fact that we have found ways to really leverage fair enforcement and fair checks out on the system in real dramatic ways with the current customer safety supervisor team and the numbers that we have currently out there. The ways in which we're going to bolster that is with that additional security presence. When all of this real difficulty went down over the last 4 years, I say that because we had 3 people doing fair enforcement in 2020, the reality of it. We had some real difficult relationships. Obviously, Portland Police Bureau left the agency in support for that. We went with Multnomah County Sheriff, which we've really been pleased with. But this has been kind of a growth over a number of years that we've been working on to establish a team that's ready to do what we need it to do. And I say that because with our customer safety supervisor team, they have been focused a lot on things that were more related to security than they were fair enforcement or code enforcement in general. For example, ensuring that people weren't riding the trains late at night with no destination, no fare, but no destination as well. And so that security emphasis and establishing access control, we really leaned heavily on our customer safety supervisor team. Some of that activity and establishing presence out on the system, responding to security events, helping at bus bridging activities, dealing with difficult passengers. Some of that activity can be done by the security team that we're developing, and obviously just had some good increases approved by this board last month. So really excited about leveraging security more than CSS so that CSS can focus on code and fair enforcement. So that's the focus of why we went with program modification 1 versus program modification 2. So, quick update in terms of personnel on the system currently. So, when this is the slide number 4 up there, we'll get to it. But I wanted just to give you a quick update on personnel. I've talked to you a lot about the increases in personnel and system safety and presence that we've done out on the system. But I think it's important for us to review this slide again. When you look at that 2022 column, it's a little bit misleading because that's the end of 2022, right? And so I'll tell you that some of those numbers, when we started 2022, customer safety supervisors, we were at 19. We moved to 37 during that year. So I'm showing you kind of the progression that we've been on, and a pretty good clip and adding a lot. I really am proud of the team that I get to work with, the leadership that I get to work with on this team. They have dealt with a lot in that growth period and maturing this group, being equitable and fair, training and de-escalation, really building this for a success of where we're at right now, which I'm really excited about. I'm going to talk a bit about that when we get to the fair enforcement slide. But one of the things I want to focus on when you see this slide is the estimates. And if you see the asterisks, I know you guys will get close to that there. These are estimated numbers. You'll see that top number is increasing to 240. That's what you just approved last month with those additional 80 allied security officers. And so we have 160 right now, but we're going to be at 240. So how are we going to use them to leverage good outcomes out on the system? And I'm going to talk a little bit about that in the next, in a couple slides. But I also want you to focus on transit police. Transit police has been kind of stuck in that 18 number. We got to 20 last year. We're really hopeful that 25 will be where we end 24. We are budgeted from 2019, 65 officers. So that's a number that needs to kind of continue to improve. And we're really working on establishing some relationships there to grow that number. 25, I think, is conservative. I think we could get more than that based on some of the relationships and conversations we've had with others that want to enter the transit police force. So I'm going to talk about that in a minute as well. Lastly, I just want to focus on the customer service side. This has been a great partnership. You heard Nate Smith up here talking about that earlier, really growing our on-street presence. One of the things I think is going to be really crucial for us as we try to win back riders, and we hear this in some of these listening sessions, is really having that high visibility, that touch that they've seen it. They've seen the teams, they've interacted with them. That's why I really focused on these event pieces too. I think the team has really honed in on that well, is to be more high visible. And I'm going to talk about this a little bit later as we go on as well, because I think it's important that we're educating our community members about what we're doing, bringing them alongside us and working as a team, which I think we have a great team built for that. So, and I do want to say, our team and some of the things that we've worked on does get national recognition. When we doing the Apt Mobility Conference, I've been asked to speak on operator assault. Why? Because we have great reductions in comparison with overall trends that were up. We have lots of different reasons. You guys know more about that than most of the people in the country. I'm going to be talking about that at the operator assault meeting that we're having, where I've been asked to speak. And so happy to join if you guys are at the mobility, but you'll hear a lot of the same information, unfortunately, you've already heard. But this is kind of the direction we've been on, is improving some very difficult conditions that have been out there. And so that's just been a good thing to be a part of, and I'm really proud of this team. And if we'll move forward to the next slide. Talked a little bit about that increase in the allied security officers that are out there. This will give us the ability to hire more security officers, and I'm going to talk about how the impact will be felt on that. One of the partnerships I'm really excited about, our safety response team gets lots of really, really good feedback. I talk about this with Sam and Bonnie quite often about different pieces of information that have come in from safety response team, either applying Narcan, saving lives, making connections, directing folks in the right direction. We're really doing a lot with our safety response team, not only for the ridership at this area, but also for our community members. And we're really excited about pursuing this. J.C. Van Atten and I are meeting with Multnomah County to see if they will help fund some of these additional officers. And they so far have been very receptive to that. So we're really excited about that. That'll give us some extra potential. You saw in that previous slide, we're hoping to grow that team quite substantially. And then, of course, the renewed commitments in relation to transit personnel. Right now, we have firm commitments from Milwaukee, the Port of Portland Police Department, as well as Lake Oswego to send us officers this year. The Multnomah County Sheriff's Department has also committed in their budget to hiring additional folks into transit. So those are actually MCSO officers. And we have lots of conversations ongoing with others to get folks back into transit, as led by the MCSO, who did a very professional job out in the system. We really enjoy our partnership. Nicole Morrissey O'Donnell, the county sheriff, is a great friend of ours, meets with us regularly, and is just a very good collaborative partner. Sent me a note the other day just on the safety response team and some great interaction she had over the winter weather. So really good partnerships there that we're developing. So if we go on to the next slide, what we're going to talk about is just the need for presence on every train. We've heard this from the Attitude and Awareness Service, or surveys that have been done. It's really important that we have presence out there on the trains, particularly for riders that were riding, I think, in 2021 and 2022, seeing a lack of presence that we even have now. We need to really win them back with that. So we're going to be focused on growing the security personnel. A lot of that is going to be done through the Allied contract and those additional 80 officers. So you'll see we need about 350 to make some of our static commitments throughout the area, as well as staff trains. If you look at that personnel chart, we're close to 350 right now if we start getting some of these SRT ads and things like that. And that's why I left this as security presence on every train and safety security personnel, because there may be scenarios where we'll be able to be a little flexible in terms of whether or not that's a security person on that train and or a SRT rider or something along those lines. The key piece is that we have presence on the train. And so I think it's going to be good that we built teams that are a little bit flexible in terms of what type of need. I've talked to you guys about this before with our dispatch capabilities. I really want to send the right resource to these areas. And this has been something that's gotten a lot of national recognition as well. Everybody understands a law enforcement professional is not the best response for every situation. An SRT person isn't the best response for every situation. So how do you match that personnel with the issue that's out there? Some just thoughts on there. I say additional funds will be needed. If we are going to continue to ramp up those security personnel, there is a possibility we may need to actually give raises and establish things to be able to compete in a marketplace, which is pretty rough right now for security personnel in Portland. We're at the table alongside a lot of others that are adding security. When you think about libraries or, the grocery store, you're seeing security personnel a lot more around the city. But with increasing security personnel and contract personnel, if we get to a point where law enforcement is really, and ridership and a bunch of other community efforts are starting to improve things, we could reduce some of those numbers at some point. So increasing security gives us that opportunity to be able to make some adjustments as time goes on versus full TriMet personnel right now, who we may need as operators or other things around the organization. So I'm putting that out there right now that gives us a little bit of flexibility. And so one of the things I want to spend some time on is how we're going to ramp up and what we're going to be doing. So this is what you should be seeing out there if you're riding or if you're talking to constituents as we move up our security personnel. So in that 0 to 60 edition, so think about that 80 personnel when we have about between 0 and 60. These are going to be our focuses. More static coverage at the transit center, again, high visibility, and also on-board presence from PDX to Gateway, Rose Quarter to Gateway, and Beaverton to Washington Park. That's what we're going to do during that 0 to 60 ramp up. Now, when we get closer to 80 for the next slide, we're going to have added patrols, but working up to full system presence out on the trains, which I think is going to be very dramatic. Already, I get a lot of feedback that people see a lot more security, and they should. You saw the numbers, right? But I would like to get to a point where we have, and again, we can track this with our security software with actual GPS tracking on the cell phone, that we have somebody on every train. And so we're moving towards that. I think that's going to give us a great return on investment from our community and from riders. So lastly, I told you I didn't want to bury my lead. One of the things I'm really excited about this next year, and this is in unison with our peers. I'll tell you, if you read articles right now about BART, WMATA, MTA, if you got on your phone right now and you saw that, everyone is focused in this same area. We're all returning to a different system and a different world. Riders are returning slower than we probably would have liked. and we're dealing with a lot of expectations. And some of that is media driven. Sometimes what's out there is very harsh on public spaces, on public transit, etc. JC mentioned the group that we met with recently. One of the conversations that we had in there is just how can I take what you guys are doing that I have seen as a writer? Because a lot of times when people show up at these meetings, they're already writers. They know exactly what they're talking about, which I love because they're invested. And they will hit you with, how can I take what you guys are doing and tell my friends? Because they're still thinking you're in a 2021 mindset and things have changed, right? And so one of the things that I'm really excited about when working with JC on this is a public campaign, really getting out there. You heard this, but explaining who we are, what your options are as a writer, ways in which to interact with the system. I have 3 children. I used to take them to Washington Park. I used to go, to the zoo in 2016 when I got here. I want that for everybody else. I'll tell you, I would have a different calculus now. And that's hard for me to admit as a chief safety officer because I want that experience for them. So we need to work back to that, and we'll get there. But it's going to take some time, and it's going to take a lot of public relations kind of work to really get out there in the community. Now, what I'm excited about when we talk about fare enforcement, and we don't have hard data to share on the fare survey yet, I really appreciate the work that the public relations team has done. They're crunching those numbers. But preliminary data and different, I really feel like we've got a team that's built to do this right for our community, that's built to do it equitably and fairly, and really out in public and not worried about how we're going to do fare enforcement. And I say that because you might remember 4 years ago, that was not the case. There was lots of concerns around how we did fare enforcement. We built teams now, which I think are going to allay a lot of those concerns. I've heard that feedback preliminarily. I'm really excited about hearing more about the fare survey work in terms of what people are seeing, how many interactions they've had. We're really crunching those numbers right now, and the public relations team has done a great job on that. But here's what you're going to see with this increased fare enforcement campaign, and we are calling it, just a more ability for fare enforcement, more checks throughout the day, greater visibility during high ridership times. That's a key piece because I want people to see while they're at events, while it's commute hours. I want them to see this activity as much as possible. TriMet is a paid fare system. That should be out in public. It should be on placards. We want to talk about it in community. I want to go out and spend time with people out there at these meetings. I want to equip them with that knowledge, and I want to talk them through the teams that we built that are actually doing a very good job of being an ambassador for all of us in ensuring it's a paid fare system. And then elevated communications. I've talked a lot about that. That's what I'm really excited about, the partnerships with JC. But I do think it's important. We're going to talk about fare enforcement, but we're also going to talk about the significant investments that we've made in the Honored Citizen Reduced Fare and education about how people can get signed up for that as well. So some of this will be just a large part of educating folks about what we're already doing, but a lot of it will also be significant work that we're going to keep our foot on the gas pedal and increasing presence out there and being available for people. So really excited about that. There'll be more to come on fare enforcement. That's a key piece of emphasis for this agency this year. But I think we can do it in a safe and equitable way for everybody, given the teams that we built. So I'm really excited about that. I want to hear about the third program modification. I know you do, from Alan Lato. Do we want to save questions for me later, do you think, Sam, or do them now?
My thoughts are to hold and hear the presentation from Alan.
Okay. Well, I set us all up for failure because I put that slide up there that says questions. So anyway,
we can always jump back to that slide.
Yeah, right. I'll hand it over to my friend Alan, who's going to talk about something that also has some pretty significant security implications as well.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. And there's a question slide at the end of my presentation, too, so we're good. So max maintenance window, which is the overnight ability for our maintenance of way staff to work on the max right-of-way, the track, the signals, the overhead wire, all that infrastructure, when the trains are not running, so that it's safe for the maintenance staff to be out there and have all their equipment set out and their tools and everything else. And this does a number of things, which I'll talk about as we go. But just to set up the situation as we have now, there is less than a single hour overnight when there is no max train anywhere in the system. And any work that can't happen overnight has to happen sometime during the day in a way that disrupts riders. So there's an opportunity here. And then related to what Andrew was just saying, there's a significant increase in security events after midnight on Max. And there is a difference in the presence on the system of a bus versus a rail vehicle where our operator is in a cab by themselves versus the bus operator very visibly being there. So the next slide here shows you some data from the Federal Transit Administration, something called the National Transit Database from 2022. This was the total time from the very last train pulling into a yard to the very first train pulling out of a yard. These are all the systems that, or these are a sampling of the systems that were reported, and only Denver has less time had less time in 2022 than we do. And you can see it's by quite a lot compared to some of the others. Some of the others have 4+ hours of time when there's no service on the system, when they can do these kinds of maintenance work. The next slide. So the solution, which we talked with you briefly about back in the fall, is at those late times, our ridership is still there. There are still people who are getting wherever they need to go, to work, back home, whatever. But it's not as high. We don't need a full train's worth of capacity. We can serve those kinds of loads with a bus. The opportunity to do more of our Max system maintenance at a time with that low ridership, then the more we can do overnight, the less we have to do during the day in a way that really disrupts the higher ridership times and confuses the day and makes it much harder for us to cover. And the idea is that having what we do with the orange, the 291 orange Max bus already, which is we don't run really past midnight on the orange line. We instead have a few bus trips that are serving the same general location as the stations. If we can do that on the other lines, then we could add between 30 minutes and almost 2 hours to the overnight work window on the Max system and still be able to handle all of the demand that we see that late at night. So the next slide. This is a picture of the overall system with some sample areas and how much time we would be able to have if we do that. I don't have a before and after. Just suffice it to say that pretty much everything except for that green line gets significantly better with the introduction of the Max bus service. And the ones that are highlighted in green, it's a little hard to see, but the transit mall section, the orange line, the red line, the blue line east of Ruby Junction, and the green line all have more than 4 hours after this change when there is no train running in the direction indicated here. And that 4-hour threshold is a meaningful one. Maintenance of way can do a significantly more work during a 4+ hour period than they can do in just 1 or 2 hours. And the next slide will give you a sense of that. So these are examples of the work that can be done. There are some things we can do in just an hour and a half. But to get to some of the more substantive ones that really make a difference in the long range reliability of the service, the long-range safety and maintenance of the system, the state of good repair, and the ability to work on that in a way that minimizes any disruptions on riders really comes with that 4+ hour threshold. The next slide. Here's a picture of what the system would look like. Again, the green line, I think I mentioned this, the green line already has a fairly long window. So at least for now, we're not seeing the need to change that service and introduce a green bus serving the same alignment. But the rest of the system would. The orange is the one that is operating today. The others would all be new. And the couple of distinctions worth pointing out, the blue line split into two. It's a pretty long way, even as a max operator, to be sitting at the controls and not being able to take a break or run to the restroom or whatever. Doing that with a bus, which does take a little bit longer because of the turns to get to and from stations, it's just a little too far. The way we've designed it here allows the majority of riders to be able to get through without having to make a transfer. So anywhere on the east side, you could get anywhere into Lloyd District downtown, pretty much as far as Goose Hollow area. Same with the west side, you could get all the way through downtown as far as the Rose Quarter. And the red line for those folks who are headed out on there or coming back from there, both for employees at the airport and also for travelers, keeping that connection to downtown Lloyd District to be able to do that easily and not force a transfer at Gateway. So that's what the system would look like in concept, and we are working on the details of where each individual stop is, what the signage looks like to get people to and from, to make sure that it's clear and easy to use and understandable. Of course, the whole system would be in our transit tracker and trip planner system. So the guiding principles for the service: avoid excessive transfers, basically match the current span of service. So if a line is running until 1 a.m., let's go ahead and keep that max bus service running until 1 a.m., but be able to stop the trains pretty soon after midnight so that we can open up that work window as much as possible. As I already mentioned, maintain service between the airport and downtown, for travelers, of course, but also for the many employees at the airport who are getting there early or leaving late. And then streamlining bus bridge routing. As you know, we use bus bridges now when there's construction or an outage on the line. Some of those can get a lot of twists and turns. We were able to streamline a few places with the knowledge that this would be a regular route instead of a sort of one-off route to minimize the additional travel time. Then the next slide. So as an example, the yellow line is one of the easiest conceptually. You can imagine if you're on the max yellow line, right across the street usually is a sidewalk that is accessible that we can use as a bus stop. There are one or two locations where we're going to have to adjust the specific location, but this one's pretty straightforward in terms of where to put the stop and how to make wayfinding really easy. There are some others that are a little bit more challenging on some of the other lines, but we're, as I said, working through that, and they all are places where we believe that we can clearly have a place that somebody can access close to the station, get access to the same neighborhoods, the same destinations and origins, and have a clarity of when to do that. I think one last. So operations, the max service would begin at or near midnight and would stop when the current max service is scheduled to stop. I already mentioned the blue service serving in two segments, one from Cleveland to Goose Hollow, so through Gresham, Gateway, Rose Quarter, downtown to Goose Hollow. The west side, Hillsborough to the Rose Quarter through downtown. And then the next. The red line would serve to downtown Portland, and that means we no longer need any transfers at Gateway people unless somebody's headed from the airport out to the east side, which certainly people could do. And the orange bus, which is already operating but is generally in the southbound direction, we'd be adding northbound service. I think the next. There we go. So state of good repair, which is a term of art in FTA, in the Federal Transit Administration, but really means, is our service reliable? Is it something that is in good repair, comfortable, safe? And appropriate for providing that great service that we want to do. This will allow us to better use our maintenance of way labor that's there overnight, but not necessarily able to do a lot of really productive work right now throughout the whole period, and reduce complexity for the planning and execution of those maintenance activities. So it's going to get simpler for us to do that. The next. So next steps on this. These changes are included in the service change ordinance that you had the first reading of at the last board meeting, and we'll have the second reading of for the next board meeting next week. It is targeted, trying to get all of them up and running in the August 25th, I believe it is, 2024 service change, so that all of it can come together. We have just some final routing details to work through with the Expo Center for the yellow line. So we are hoping we can get that in time. Otherwise, we are able to move ahead with that coming at a later service change date. As it says, finalizing, the schedules are all finalized, but the stop details are being finalized. Continuing and expanding community rider outreach and that wayfinding and signage to make sure that people understand what the service is and how they can take advantage of it. And this is all, as I said, focused on night service now. We may come back I'm sure we will come back and consider at least making some changes to the very early morning trips, because we have trains that are pulling out at 3 a.m. And it takes a little while for same thing as at late at night where the loads are pretty low and the need is not for the large vehicle. Same thing first thing in the morning. If we could open that up a little bit more, we can turn more of those segments of the system green and have more of those segments where we can do more of that work. And then just to reiterate, as Andrew was talking about, we get an extra bonus of those additional events that happen on the system after midnight. They will no longer be there in an unaccompanied MAX train. These folks are, in some ways, maybe not even likely to get on a bus, but certainly there will be greater presence and ability to understand what's happening and react to it much more quickly and diffuse those situations in the first place. So a great opportunity to be able to improve our maintenance effectiveness, improve our maintenance ability and volume and scale and speed of maintenance with having few impacts on our riders as possible. And with that, questions for any of these?
Thank you for all that information, fellow board members. It's our time to share our thoughts and questions. Please, Director Kim.
Thank you both. A quick question for Alan. Would you cover some numbers on the potential dollar-wise cost savings in connection with the August changes or additional cost? And two, the number of maintenance-related disruptions that would be decreased. So I'm just trying to get a sense of it. It sounds great. I'm in agreement. In fact, we talked about it back last fall, and this is great. But then in terms of metrics go, just curious how it would look number-wise.
Yeah, I don't want to quote specific numbers because I don't have them in front of me. But the cost per hour of a MAX train with the 5 times more capacity than a bus is more than double the cost per hour. And so to the extent, even though the buses will take a little bit more service hours just because they're going a little slower, there is a substantial just operating savings in being able to switch that. I don't think that alone might not be a reason to do that, but that plus the ability to do the additional maintenance, which the maintenance team is still identifying as we sort of tweak the schedules and find out what the final windows are. They're still working through, okay, what are we going to be able to fit within those windows in each of those areas. So I don't have a specific number, but certainly in talking with our director of maintenance away, a very clear indication that, the maintenance way team that is on overnight, they have some time to prep and then they have some time to work on the alignment. If they're on an 8-hour shift, they're working on the alignment for 2 hours, there's only so much they can get done. If they're there for 3 or 4 hours, I don't want to claim we're doubling effectiveness, of course, but it's a substantial increase in effectiveness.
Thank you. I think it would be helpful to understand how many disruptions are happening prior to August because we don't have enough window of time to maintain those infrastructure, and what kind of reduction we will see in terms of the less disruptions, right? And I think that's an important metric for us, board members representing different regions, because then we can assure our partners and our constituents that they're getting a better deal here with this work that's starting in August. So
Great.
thank
Yeah.
you.
We will work on that. One of the good news, bad news things of the past year and a half of the red line construction is that the red line has required some outages on the system, and we've been able to take advantage of that in a way that we hadn't and catch up on some work.
Mm-hmm.
So if we just did a year-to-year comparison,
Right,
it wouldn't quite be fair, but we'll try to pull together some information about sort of what an apples-to-apples comparison might look like.
Thank you both.
Director Edwards? And then we'll go to you.
Thank you. And thank you both for your presentations. Alan, mine's along the same lines as Director Kim. I just want to know, how do we compare in regards, you had a comparison, maybe I missed it, in regards to the time that we're down, the time that we have to work on maintenance, but how do we compare in regards to downtime for our system in regards to those maintenance repairs?
I don't think I'm 100% understanding your question. So compared to other systems, or?
Yeah, and compared to other systems, we're like number 2 as far as having that window of opportunity, correct?
Right.
So how much time are we actually down? How much does it impact our system only having that small window in order to get those maintenance repairs done?
Yeah, I can't talk about that off the top of my head. We can look into that. The other complexion is that some of those systems up there are only 10 years old, so they have a very different maintenance environment than we do, and some of them are 70 plus years, so they have a very different maintenance environment, but we can look into what we can do in terms of comparing.
Okay, yeah, I think the board would like to see that number. Andrew, again, thank you for your presentation as well. What are we doing, or what does it look like on our vetting process for transit police applicants? And what is the diversity of those that we that apply and those that are actually hired on as police, transit police?
Yeah, I can get you the diversity numbers. I don't know if off the top of my head, but I'll get that to you. How this works with the MCSO being in the lead position, they really run this program from a transit police perspective. Mm-hmm. They enroll other folks, and they've got to meet the criteria of the MCSO. So it's actually really great to work with a very, I think, professional, well-organized group like the MCSO, because they do a very good job of vetting. At some point, I'd love to bring our chief, Matt Jordan, in front of you guys, a venue like this, or just a meet and greet kind of thing. But what you'll get from Matt is Matt, when we have people like another entity, I won't mention any names to call anybody out, but when they offer up an officer, they vet them pretty heavy on the MCSO, because they're going to be working here in this building with their officers, and they want to make sure this is professional. Mm-hmm. And I think if you look at the MCSO's record, they do a very professional job in this community. And so that's why we're really excited about working with them. And I think we've seen some great gains, although we're so down numbers. We've had some really good activity out there, given that we've had 18, But as we build back up, we're not going to give up on the quality of the officers that work in our program.
Okay. I think I asked this question before about retention, and I'd like to see what those numbers look like as well.
Yes.
Also, with safety and security, I've really been aware of mental health issues over the past few years, but in regards to safety and security, I think those numbers are heightened. And what kind of access do they have to mental health services? And is it voluntary or mandatory, and what is the frequency?
And this is for the personnel, the access that the personnel have. Yeah, it's a great question. And that's one that's really near and dear to my heart. Even in this role that I'm in, we see a lot of things. We're around a lot of very difficult situations. We're aware of a lot of very difficult situations. Frontline personnel are feeling that daily, every single day. I'll use for an example, there's several different examples, but because there's different teams, but SRT, we have people that are really delving into areas that are very difficult. Think about things like addiction, mental health, etc. One of the things we pride ourselves with that team is we have people that are sometimes come from lived experience. They've dealt with addiction issues. They've lived on the street. They know these kinds of situations. That's why they're so effective at dealing with them. But because of that, they're at a heightened risk for being really affected by that, right? And so we actually have them meeting with folks. We actually have a contract that we put together to sort of have folks be available to them to do mental health triage and that sort of thing. We are doing something similar, just starting to do something similar even for our surveillance team. Allied has their own program, which I could talk to you about. But so there's different elements to this. Obviously, transit police have their own program. Our customer safety supervisors are TriMet employees, and so they have access to the CISM group. You might have heard that talked about, crisis intervention, stress management. I actually, as the director of management back in 2017, we kind of rebooted that program here. It is an amazing program. It does great things. I'm really excited about our executive director of maintenance. He actually has a therapeutic dog. I'm calling him out here, Dakota, who he actually goes out and actually is going to be participating on the CISM team as well. And you'll hear this at the presentation that I'm doing here at the Convention Center, the Mobility Conference, in a couple weeks. That is one of the areas that you have to focus on is the response to these traumatic events. I mean, if you can imagine the types of scenarios that our operators and others have been dealing with, and that's operators. You then take it to a customer safety supervisor who's actually out clearing a train at Rose Quarter at 12 o'clock, talking to people about fare and getting abuse thrown at them, those types of things. That's very, very difficult. So we're keenly aware of that, and we work with that. We have an amazing group of folks on the customer safety supervisor team in general. You might remember when we opened that application up for those, people came from all over to do that work because they care about TriMet. And they're good jobs, and they like working here in the customer safety or the public safety office with the other folks in customer safety and security. It's a good thing to be able to provide safety and security on the system. And you see that in those videos that we put out on trimet.org/personnel. Those are a really good tool for us also to talk about the activity that we're doing out there. So we're keenly focused on that, and we will continue to make gains on that, even just, like I said, with our surveillance department now coming into that as well. So it's out there. Yeah.
Okay. Yes, I just would like to know, if it's mandatory.
Yeah.
First of all, and if it's, because prevention is huge. It'd be better to find out something before it happens and be able to deal with it. And you're talking about, human lives as well.
Yeah.
And so that would be my main concern there. And what frequency is being recommended by medical professionals? That should come into play as well. How much internal mixing and matching goes on with these teams that are going out, and in regards to mixing and matching different individuals, male, female, different racial and ethnic groups that are being represented here? And at the same time, are they going to different routes, or do they go to the same route all the time? Because if I go to the same route, I tend to, I would tend to see the same people all the time or have the same experience. But if I go to a different route, I might have a different experience. And mixing teams, I think, would be a benefit, because that way you see how other folks handle certain situations.
Yeah, I love that. So a couple different ways I'd like to answer that, because it's a good question. It talks about kind of how we built these teams. Mm-hmm. So number one, we want our teams diverse and reflective of the community they serve. You'll see that in our teams in general. But also, on top of that, we try to cater to the schedule of the different personnel. A lot of the people that work on our system of safety and security are transit-dependent riders, or at least want to use that as their mode. They get free rides, So we kind of try to stage them at different areas that are more close to where they're at. So if they live in Beaverton, they're probably going to work that shift out that direction. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So there's some difficulty with moving people to different areas from a reporting structure, because I don't want to burden them with, okay, you got to get out to Gresham to report out there. And when you talk about retention, those are some of the things. But in terms of mixing our groups, you might remember last year when we won the award, it was really focused on the missions that we were doing out there on the system and how we brought all of our teams out there. Mm. So, we would go out there, we would educate. We had a smaller group then, but down the line, we'd always have SRT available, right? So if somebody's getting caught up in a fare mission, it's clearly a mental health need that they have. We would bring the SRT in to address that specific need for that person, and so. Mixing teams is essential. It's kind of the core of why I think the way we're built the way we are is to have the right response to the right level of activity. A law enforcement professional, quite honestly, and this is why we work so well with the MCSO, they want our SRT showing up to these things. They love our SRT coming in and helping in some of these scenarios. It de-escalates the situation. It gets them more transparent and working with a person who may have lived experience, and they can go and have a conversation and get connected in with a need. It's better that than have a law enforcement professional have to focus on that when they have so many other focuses they should be focused on, if that makes sense. So mixing and matching is absolutely about our program.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Director Kellogg.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. The news about the additional bodies on every train, very welcome. I could spend a lot of time talking about this, and I want to thank you and Eric and Miles for helping me do a deep dive on fare enforcement and other things. More of that information will be coming forward. But what I want to talk about is these transit security officers. They're now, the presence is going to be there. Right. Let's talk about the extent of their authority. Mm-hmm. So just let's run an example. We've got transit security officers, these allied personnel, and they witness verbal assault going on the train. Are they able to try to get into that situation and de-escalate it, or is their next step, let's call somebody who's actually got some authority? Yeah, they will go in and put themselves in between that scenario. And I get these responses even from TriMet employees all the time. Hey, really appreciated. There was a security guard. There's a person in a mental illness type situation. They put themselves between that person, and they will use their de-escalation skills, which we train them heavy in de-escalation. If the situation arises, life safety involved, they can physically respond, but we don't have them out there doing active code enforcement. They're more of a safety and life safety element to our program. So, for example, if it's a late night train or something and there's somebody that's on there that's having a mental health crisis or whatever, they will be out there. They will communicate back in with our security operations center, who will communicate to TPD, who will come out and address that issue if it's a law enforcement issue, like, for example, have them physically removed or arrested for some of the behavior that they've witnessed. But again, they're out there, our eyes and ears, and they're putting themselves between that harm and our ridership and others. And so that's really their job function. Okay, so let's just again imagine whoever the bad actor is here does not de-escalate, commits a crime, whatever that is, and then retreats from the system. Do our security people have authority to detain them? Well, if they've been physically assaulted, so if somebody pushes them or something, where they're trying to make them leave the train because they're exhibiting bad behavior and they're having that conversation, they can detain them there. And that's for their own safety in that sense. So they take them to the ground and do that type of behavior. We don't want them doing that necessarily. That's not our program, right? I say necessarily. We don't want them doing that. But they have the option to do that to protect life safety, right? But in a perfect scenario, the way that it should go down, and I say this because this is a very messy thing for every transit operator. When you have somebody that is not de-escalating, that is becoming violent, perhaps it's mental health driven, and you can't do anything about that, but it's still violent. These scenarios happen out there all the time. So how do you have the right response to that? In a perfect scenario, that security officer would be able to de-escalate them. If they don't, they're already in communication with SOC. They know what's going on out there, and we have that law enforcement response. And our response times to the system are not
that bad. People get there and they get arrested. I get a watch commander report every night. I share this around. There are people arrested on our system or around our system every night. That's not uncommon for a large operator like us. And it's usually starts with a security personnel or somebody out there that has witnessed something, been involved with something, and then makes that call. And that's when law enforcement responds. Now, you remember over the last 3 years, we've seen significant reductions in the calls for law enforcement because those scenarios are getting less and less often out there, particularly in the night hours. And that's because we have presence. Now, in a perfect world, some of those actors that are going out there, and the Watch Commander report reveals this, a lot of these folks have several warrants, 5, 6, 7 warrants for their arrest. That is something that we would like to address, but we need regional commitments and partnerships in those areas. And I say that because our primary mission is to keep our riders safe and the operation safe. And so we want those people to be off of our system. So if that person de-escalates for our allied officer, they walk off the system, that really didn't solve the issue, I think, that we want as a community. And so community partnerships around ensuring those folks are held accountable and those types of things, we really want to continue to invest in those. Now, we have 2 DAs that work in this office. You guys have interacted with them, I think, Julian and Megan, to do phenomenal work for us. We now have 2 DA investigators that are assigned to them, so they can do follow-ups on some of these scenarios, even where they've left the train, but they've broken a window, or they pushed our security officer, or they spit at somebody. That happens quite often. These are the kinds of things we can follow up on now. And now we have a great surveillance capability to hold those people accountable. And if you talk with Julian, they're getting some great results up there because at TriMet we have surveillance. And so we can really see what we did. And when you go to a judge, you can say, here's the surveillance tape. It adds a layer of accountability that unfortunately other areas don't have. And it also, and I've told you guys this before, but we have also spent a lot of time working with our partnerships to help them using our surveillance to kind of create some better outcomes around our system. And so part of the education campaign that I would like to see on fair enforcement and everything else is really trying to lean into the fact that we have cameras out there. You will be held accountable. We have SB 1553. We have HB 4002. We're building our capabilities for holding people accountable if they're going to break the law or behave in a way that's not against the TriMet code.
Okay, and with respect to additional capacities, you shared a story with me about the recent incident that happened on the train, and if we had certain additional capabilities, that may not have happened. Would you care to share that story with the board, just briefly?
Well, yeah, I would say it's difficult. We've had some very tragic circumstances on our system. It shouldn't detract from some of the great work that's been done, which is always hard for us as an organization. We take these hits and then we try to re-educate everybody about how good we've been doing and lowering severity of crime on the system, that sort of thing. This most recent incident was a terrible tragedy, and it really involved mental illness. It's a person who was mentally ill who reacted very, very badly. And unfortunately, someone lost their life, and that's tragic for me, and for this organization. How you limit that type of behavior is very tricky because this person exhibited really no signs that they were going to be acting in a way that was along those lines. And so what was the right resource or capability? Well, I'll tell you, and I think I've shared this with you, this person really shouldn't have been in this state. They were under post-prison supervision in California. They had interacted with law enforcement. They'd interacted with others, but nothing had been done. And so these are the types of things that we as a community are going to need to address. That incident could have occurred anywhere in the city of Portland. This person was very mentally ill, had a weapon, was focusing on people, and unfortunately it happened on our train. This is part of that presence. We want to have security out there as a deterrent for that sort of thing, which is possible. But I don't think that goes the full measure for that situation. We really need community law enforcement to address those types of violent folks out there and faster than we're currently doing and hold them accountable.
And I appreciate that, but from just a TriMet perspective, had our officers had interaction with this individual prior to this incident?
We have this person had received warnings on our system from our fare enforcement team. These are the types of things that are out there that our fare enforcement team is out there. I mean, it's nice that they interacted with them, but what are our abilities to address those types of situations, to remove them from the system? As part of our legislative package for this next year, and one that we pursued last year, but it didn't go through, is giving our customer safety supervisors who do code enforcement LEDs access, so that they can actually have connection into the law enforcement community. Had that behavior occurred, had we had that photo identification ability, we could have connected them with law enforcement and recognized that this person is not supposed to be in the state of Oregon and they're violating their parole, right? We don't have that yet, but that's part of what we're asking for, because we're having to develop tools that law enforcement used to do on the system. So if fare enforcement was done like it was in 2018, 17, law enforcement interacted with this same individual, recognized that they were evading fare even though they were being completely compliant, giving their name, giving their address, doing all those types of activities, they would have still been able to trigger them into, you're not supposed to be in the state of Oregon. Mm-hmm. And so having that ability is going to be something we're going to be pursuing. But I also think that there's this overlay of, law enforcement needs to be out there working through some of these issues alongside us. And we love our relationship with the TPD, but we need to also have commitments from community leaders, DAs, et cetera, to hold people accountable.
Okay. And I apologize for monopolizing so much time here, but I've got one more question.
Yeah.
A lot of your emphasis here was on security on every train. What are we doing on buses?
Yeah, great question. So buses have a different, Alan and I were just talking about this, but buses have a different profile from a security perspective. If you look at kind of the level of incidents that are out there, most of those incidents are directed at bus operators, right? Because they're a moderating influence. Somebody gets on, they're in a mental health crisis or whatever, they interact with the bus operator. Having those shields, having the safety monitors up, showing people you're on candid camera whenever you're acting, that has been very helpful in reducing some of those incidents. So infrastructure changes that we've done out there have been very helpful in reducing those. But we are starting to put people on buses as well, mostly the SRT, because those are the types of issues that don't get resolved by an operator calling the SOC or the OCC and just saying, I've got an issue on the bus. People, again, law enforcement responds to those. We send rail soups and bus soups out to those locations to interact with those individuals. So we do have supervisors that respond to those as well, which aren't necessarily part of the security team. So there's a different kind of response for those. But in general, the bus system is safer because you have presence on the system. And I was just talking about this with Alan, because in this switch to going to night bus, we're going to see some gains there. We saw the same thing with the red line when we were shuttling out there during construction. So that behavior of I'm in a quiet place, I'm in a place alone, is not a good situation for a transit system. We see that on the light rail, we see it on our elevators, we see it in our parking garages, all those areas where there isn't presence, there isn't sufficient lighting, surveillance. Those types of things is where you have the worst outcomes. Buses, because of that operator on there, is a different profile, risk profile from our perspective. But we are investing having folks on the bus, and particularly at the transit centers where they all come in together. We have a huge amount of, over 700 buses operating, close to 24 hours a day, just rolling around the system. You think about trying to put a security person on every one of those buses. Impossible.
Right.
But we can put them at transit centers, have them get on the bus, and this is what we've been doing, and talking to the operator, how's your ride going, just kind of being an encouragement to them, get off the bus. And so that's one way too.
Right. And our drivers on the buses, protocol is for them not to engage.
Yes.
Right?
That's right.
So my only thought on this, and I'm not asking for a comment, is that we know that there is an increased percentage of bad actors later at night. We're going to be moving those people from trains to buses.
Yes.
I don't think the mode of transportation affects their
Yeah.
modus operandi. And so maybe looking at putting actual presence of a security person on those late night buses, at least early on, to see how that works.
And that is the plan. And we didn't share that, but I'll respond to that. During COVID, you guys might remember we were asked to run a CAN bus. It was just kind of an interesting thing during that time. If you guys remember, we were all building up our cans because we weren't going and dropping them off. And all of a sudden, there was a glut of cans all over the city. So Governor Brown at the time asked us to actually set up a CAN bus line. I use as an example, what we did is when we first started that, we had security out there actually where the transition was coming so that when people offloaded off the train, they were there. That's similar to what we're going to be doing with this event. Over time, that became kind of a non-issue. People just were fine just getting on the bus. But at first, there was issues with how much stuff they were bringing on. There were fights between people at the bus stops. And so we had to have security there to kind of be there. And so that's what we're doing for this event. As we kick it off, we're going to staff that. But again, finite amount of resources, right? And so we're moving in a long direction, but it's nice to have those extra officers when we think about trying to help with those kinds of scenarios.
Okay. That's enough for me. Thank you for your very thorough answers. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Director Frisbee?
I'll be fast. I know we're already over, so appreciate both of your presentations and your work. Thank you. I'm going to go backwards just because I'm reading up that way from my notes. Alan, thank you for the max maintenance change proposal. This is just a question. The green line window, I assume that's large already because it aligns with the Clackamas County or with the Clackamas Town Center hours of operation. Is that? And when
I think that is one of many factors to go into it. Part of the reason it's longer is because it's pretty close to Ruby Junction.
Oh, yeah.
So it's just easy to pull in and out.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. And I just wanted to flag, I appreciate that we are thinking about in that process and in the way you split some of the now to be bus lines, that we are thinking about airport workers, because I know that's actually a pretty high use in the sort of edges of our service. So I just wanted to flag and highlight that. I think that's it. Sorry, hold on. Yes, that page is empty. Andrew, a couple of quick questions. And first, also a comment. I'm really excited here that we're considering using the supportive housing services, trying to go after supportive housing services dollars for the SRT team. I think that's really smart. And if there are ways that we, as the board, can be helpful, I think that's really a good idea and a great use of those dollars.
Yes, thank you.
So, can the cities that we are working with their police departments trying to bring folks on board, I would be interested in knowing if we could work with them to make sure they're getting some of the same training that the MCSO is.
Right. We actually, they get the same training here. We do that. That's one of the things that we really invest in is training. And it's one of the selling points for some of these small agencies to develop their officers, because they get amazing training and real life example through the MCSO. So, yeah.
That's great, because I really appreciate the work that the MCSO has done, and what I hear from folks around the region is how much the different feel of their engagement as law enforcement as compared to some other folks, and I think that's important. So, can you just sort of ground me for the fair enforcement discussion? What happens right now if I am on a bus and I haven't paid a fare?
Right now, if you are cooperative, you give your name, you give your address, you do all the things that you're supposed to, you may get a warning that if they find that you did it again, you're going to get a citation. After a citation, eventually you're going to get to an IPT, which is a trespass, because we've told you, you cannot use this system. It's a paid fare system. From there, if you violate an IPT, you'll get excluded, and then we enforce that. So, you would get it with the IPT, you'd get an exclusion, and then from there, you'd get further criminal activity if you're violating your exclusion, if that makes sense.
So 2 questions as part of that. I'm gonna like 2-track it.
Yeah.
Let's say that I do not qualify for any of our honored citizen or low income fare program,
Right.
and so I've started down. I got a warning, and then I got a citation. But in terms of violating the IPT, you would only know that if I tried to pay for a fare, and then it would pull up that I could not be on board, or it's like if I have an IPT and I step onto a bus, how do people know that I have an IPT?
Well, that's an issue. And so, imagine that we have only a certain amount of capabilities to be able to enforce those out on the system. Now, one of the things that we're really investing in is our surveillance team, because in the past, what you'd have operators who tried to keep track of this kind of stuff. I remember that guy, he's an exclusion. Well, sometimes they got it wrong, and that's not the right person to exclude. And then you end up in a worse scenario where excluding somebody who was doing exactly the right thing. So you have to have some confirmation of that, right? Without, a sheet which has quite a few people on it in a given period, going through names and faces and that sort of thing. You really need that technological solution, and that's what we're trying to build with the security center as well as the security software to be able to track this in real time and be able to have people say, is this a person that's on? I think they might be. You can check the surveillance and actually confirm that and then address that issue. Outside of that, it's going to be if they act in a way that's inappropriate or they get caught up in another fair mission where they that kind of continual progression, right?
But we're reactive in that moment.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So my other question is this track. Say I don't have a fare. I'm on board. I'm talking to the officer, and they're saying, "Do you know about do you qualify for our low-income fare honored citizen?" Can you just talk about what happens from that approach?
Yeah. So our teams actually all have that information out there, and they actually have piece of information that they give out from our public affairs about how you apply, how you get into that. Usually that first interaction will be a warning with that information, right? And so again, and you'll hear more about this once we dig into the fare survey that just went on. The teams are very well educated in terms of how to try to be responsive to people's needs out there. And so they're going to provide information on how to get into reduced fare. So, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. Oh, God. I feel like I had one last question. Oh, my last note is that I would love to work with both of you, and I'm seeing John Gardner in the back, to figure out some way to bring this to TIAC in a way that we think could be a productive conversation. So.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
And one other thing I just put out there, we talk about future goals and things that we're working on. I talked to Sam and I have been working on access control and providing some of those options out there for our folks. All increased presence is access control. But one of the things that you'll notice if you go read around the country about, that fair interaction, and you think about people on exclusion lists and that sort of thing. If we have some fair gate technologies that we can introduce at TriMet, just from a long term, these are not quick fixes, but just when you're thinking in the long term, that's going to be really big for our community. It works in other areas. It's kind of the first line of defense on fare evasion. So, but we didn't build that way. So we got to do it for the future, but it's something we need to think about.
I will say big picture, I am really interested in that as an option. I know it's expensive. I know it's hard to retrofit our system, but as a way to improve security without necessarily increasing armed enforcement, to me, it seems like an important option.
Yeah.
Thank you, Director Frisbee. I have an observation and a comment. I should say an observation and a request. I understand fare evasion is a thing that occurs, and our discussion today and the most recent, very tragic example really demonstrates that when we go out for fare enforcement, it's not as much, or it's not at all about chasing that fare dollar. It takes a lot of investment and a lot of resource to chase that $2.50. It has so much more to do with the responsible user relationship, the social contract that we all make as riders. And if you haven't noticed, fare evasion is really the indicator. It's the canary in the coal mine of whether someone is, potentially misbehaving or doing other things. Fare evaders that choose to come back and start paying fares, sounds like they could kind of fly under the radar so long as they behave in that regard. But we also know it's not just for lack of funds that people are not paying fares. We have mechanisms for folks that can't afford it. But when we go out to address fare evasion, it has so much more to do with making sure that people actually know how to use the system, use it responsibly, and that we are preventing flying under the radar of folks that have broader sort of disavowed their social contract. There's bad actors out there. Fare evasion is sort of what unites them in our system. And that was just my comment. So thank you for these updates. The request I have now, clearly this is a topic the board is very interested in. time is insufficient for everything we want to understand and know. And you're doing a lot of stuff, Andrew. You've got a lot of activity happening in this area. My request is that in our weekly updates, we actually have a bullet that allows Andrew to feed information to us about updates, milestones, and little bits that will help educate us. Because I'm hearing CISM, CSS, SRT, MCSO. I'm hearing about therapy dogs now. Increased surveillance. This is all fantastic stuff. Empower us as a board. These are the questions we are most likely to be asked about, and we understand that we should be informed when there's a major incident. But on top of that, when those major incidents occur, especially, these topics come up in backyards all the time. Empower us with a little bit more info to know, well, here's the latest, here's where we're tracking, here's what CSO means, or schism, and all this other stuff. These will help empower us to respond in a much more informed and updated way. I think that that's real estate well spent on our weekly updates. So that was my request. If you could please help and coordinate with Andrew. I know Sam puts those together. You've got way more info than time to share with us. If you could put it into bite-sized chunks and just feed Sam a little feed that can help us learn little by little, we'll have better questions when we engage in these types of things. It's never enough. So with that, I'll hand it. Yes?
Could we just request more therapy dogs?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
John's your guy, right back.
Amazing. So cool. My heart melted when I heard that. Yeah. So with that, if the board has any other comments before I yield it over to our general manager, I see none. Sam, please bring us home.
We really appreciate this great discussion with you today, and of course your guidance here. I'll reflect that I have 8 pages of notes from this conversation here. I really want to appreciate you for the feedback. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to take this information. We're going to go back and discuss it. I will be coming back to you at the April board meeting and give you an update and a general manager's report just to give you some bits and pieces on what's going on. We'll definitely take the information, as you stated, in the weekly update and see if we can put some educational session there for the board as well, or either another document that we send out to you on that as we move forward.
Yes, and
finally, our safety security. I just want to thank Andrew and Alan for the updates, giving us all the information to share in the big picture of Vision 2030. I truly believe that if we don't make our system safe, people are not going to come back and ride with us. So it's absolutely top of mind for me as the leader and top of mind for our team here today. We are focusing on our guiding our actions. So this is very critical. And as a customer here, I ride the system on a daily basis. So I'm able to see exactly what's going on. And I was talking to a few of you, Director Kellogg, about my experience today coming to this location here. So I do know by looking at your faces right now, just as well as the faces out here, that there's a huge dedication with you. And we have a lot of support from you. Really appreciate that. And thank you for what's doing the right thing on what matters to our community and also to TriMet as we move forward here. Want to just reassure you again, we have the people that's committed to delivering safe, clean, accessible, and reliable transit. I truly believe in this team, and I truly believe in the 5 pillars that we have put together for this monumental goal, and that's ridership, community, people, infrastructure, and resources. So we're going to take that information. We're going to continue to be guided by our rally cry, and that's, again, connecting people for a better life. That's what we're about. And I just want you to know that we are very determined and feeling more fired up today after hearing your feedback. Seeing all of the progress that we've talked about, seeing the ridership changes, I'm feeling encouraged by the progress so far. So I want to just share with you a photo from our Monday, Oh. Well, we will share it in a weekly update. Just to let you know, this is not a dream, our vision, and it's a promise to the Portland region. It's a promise to a brighter, more connected, and more sustainable future. So with that, we are TriMet, and just thank you for being part of this journey with us. And with that, President Gonzalez, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you so much. Let's connect people to life. Thank you for your time, for your effort, your thought leadership, and your perseverance in this. Keep it up. I hope that our feedback today has helped you see where you're rocking it, where perhaps you might want to lean into new things. Hope it's useful feedback for you. And finally, I want to thank the board for their dedication, time, curiosity in all of these areas. It sounds like we're all on the same page. We want the same thing. Let's keep it up. And with that, I really appreciate your time. Thanks for this session. Adjourned. It's a strategy. I know, but it's not an official meeting. I don't want to.